Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to day 2 of testing in Barcelona. I'm not there, but here in my office to talk about it as always. Hope you're all good in chat. Lots to get through today, as you might expect. I'll get the housekeeping straight out of the way immediately though. Channel is powered, of course, by Motorsport Network and Motorsport Imaging. That's where you're getting the live timing and the images from on there as well. Please do subscribe if you're new to the channel. Don't forget to drop a like as well, and all the other stuff is linked in the description and all of that business like that. So I didn't mean to punch my mic, but why not? I'm going to kick off though with a look at the morning's times. We've already had a morning session, obviously, and a couple of hours left in the afternoon session now. So Daniel Ricciardo topped the first session this morning, 1:20.355. I know we can't read into the tyres, but that is the time he did. That was on the C3 tyre, 64 laps. Carlos Sainz was a machine out there with 71 laps this morning on the C3 tyre. He did a 1:20.546. Pierre Gasly, 1:20.764, also on the C3 tyre. He did 60 laps. Alex Albon in the Williams, 4th place, 1:21.531. C3 tyre for him to do that time, 47 laps. 55 laps for Lance Stroll, who did a 1:21.920 on the C2 tyre. Mick Schumacher, 1:21.949 on the C3 tyre. 65 laps for him. Much better morning for Haas on track. 21 laps for Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, 1:22.288 with the C3 tyre. Perez, a 1:22.412 on the C2 tyre. 38 laps. Andy brought out the first red flag of the session after stopping on track with a gearbox issue, which has now been resolved. So he's back out for the afternoon. No worries there. Lewis Hamilton, 9th place, 1:22.562 on the C2 tyre. 40 laps in total. 66 laps for Esteban Ocon, and he did a 1:23.280 on the C2 tyre. And just in terms of lap times, as you can see there, Daniel Ricciardo still has the fastest time, 89 laps, so he's in for the afternoon too, so already up at 89 laps. Sainz isn't in for the afternoon, but he's on there in 2nd place. Gasly 3rd, 99 laps for Pierre, and we've still got a couple of hours to go, so he's pretty sure he's going to go through the 100. 47 for Albon, 29 for Leclerc is in this afternoon. Russell in this afternoon for Hamilton, 30 laps for him. Latifi, 39 laps. He's in for Albon, so already catching up with what Alex Albon did this morning. Stroll, 55. Schumacher, 66. Bottas, 21. Of the drivers who were in for the afternoon, Mazepin is last at the moment, 1:25.5 on the C2, but he brought out another red flag because he stopped on track, was told to by the team, and I believe that was an oil pressure problem or a fuel pressure problem. I'll double check that one in a moment. Guan Yu Zhou is out on track. First look at him in the Alfa Romeo. 1:23.8 C3 tyre, 36 lap. Ocon's down in 14th place, has done 107 laps already today. Well done him. Vettel in this afternoon for Aston Martin, 39 laps so far. And Sergio Perez still on 38 laps despite the fact they've solved that issue. So I'll keep an eye on the Red Bull feed for that one. But there you go, fuel pump. Thank you very much, Coleman B in chat. Let's hop on over. There we go. It is working. Fantastic. Good afternoon, Stuart. Busy morning on track. A little quiet start to the afternoon, but McLaren and Ferrari, not that it means anything, top of the timesheets again.
Yeah, I think Norris said at the end of yesterday he'd rather be at the bottom of the timesheets because he hates all the expectation that comes with being on the top, even though, as we have to say every year around this time, it means nothing at all. But actually, those cars putting in a hefty amount of laps the first 2 days and some what can only be described as decent times, I guess, even though we know they're not really maxing them out. So, yeah, a lot of teams out there looking good, and Ferrari and McLaren among them.
Absolutely, and like you say, we can't read it, which is we won't get too excited, but it's nice to see them up there. I was going to say not rather than seeing Mercedes up there, but we never really see Mercedes in testing topping the timesheets, do we? They like to put the sandbags on for that one, but it's been an interesting day. Like I say, Perez brought out a red flag for I think he had a gearbox issue. He had to stop on track near turn 13. That was the first red flag of testing. So that's a day and a half we got through before a red flag, and then like London buses, not long after that, Nikita Mazepin with a fuel pump problem. So not dramatic, but a couple of issues starting to creep in, to be expected. Of course, that's the point of testing, but again, lots of laps on the board. 89 for Ricciardo, 99 for Gasly. Sainz did 71 this morning alone. I mean, we touched on it yesterday. The reliability on these cars is insane, and it's just great to see them pumping in the laps in a session that isn't testing.
Absolutely. Shame, of course, to see Alfa Romeo still kind of having some struggles. we were saying at the end of yesterday's stream that we were hoping they'd get themselves together a bit more today, but that's not quite forthcoming yet. But I'm sure we'll see more of them. I said I'm sure yesterday, but hopefully we'll see more of them coming soon. Good to see Haas. They had a couple of problems, but they are actually putting in some decent lap counts today, and probably Mazepin will hopefully do a lot more.
Yeah, 9 so far for Mazepin, but Schumacher 66 this morning, which is, I think, more than he did yesterday combined, wasn't it? So a much better day in that sense. Thank you to SMM Palmer in chat for the super chat. Says, I've got an hour till I have to go to work. Cheers for the stream. It's good to chill and get caught up on what's happening. Thank you very much, mate. Always appreciated the support on the channel. So far, I mean, out on track, it was a quiet start to the afternoon, but it's definitely started to pick up. So Ocon's gone through the 100 laps, as I've already said. Russell is picking up the pace on the C2 tyres, 121.890. Vettel's out there as well doing some laps. So yeah, but word of the day, and I think you hinted at this yesterday, Stuart, might be the word that we hear a lot of, is definitely porpoising or porpoising, however you want to pronounce that. A lot of people talking about it. We've had a video from Craig Slater as well, doing an impression of it. So clearly that's word of the season. What was the word of the season last year? Flaws or something like that, wasn't it? It was brake ducts on the Racing Point the year before that. So yeah, that's what we're going with this year. Why not? I don't understand it totally, but yeah, teams seem to be concerned. Mattia Binotto saying they've underestimated the potential for the new ground effect cars to cause that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if this is a thing that it continues throughout the entire season, or whether it's something most of the teams, learn to control through this testing. And by the time we get to the first couple of races, maybe we hear a little bit less of the word porpoising. But with everything like so determined by how the floor is sucking the car to the ground, I feel like there may be certain, even if it gets more under control, there may be certain tracks where we see more of it. As a quick sort of explainer of what porpoising is. First of all, as I said yesterday, a porpoise is a bit like a dolphin. I feel like dolphining maybe is a funny word, even though it's easier to kind of understand, like the motion of a dolphin in the ocean, the kind of up, down, leaping across the surface. But essentially, the ground effect part of these cars are sucking the car down. The downforce is coming from underneath, and it's pulling the car down towards the ground. And there can be a point where with how close it's pulling the car to the ground, it can interrupt the flow of air going underneath the car. And when that happens, it loses downforce suddenly. The car springs back up. And as it springs back up, air rushes underneath the car and sucks it back down again. So you kind of get this kind of feedback loop of the car getting sucked and then losing its spring and bouncing up again. So it's not dramatic in the way that it was back in the actual ground effect era back in the end 80s, I want to say, or maybe the end of the 70s.
I can't remember now. Yeah, somewhere around
where
there.
It would, but you get proper bouncing back then. It'd be and actually some ground effect cars that are made today. But it's enough that it's got them concerned, because it's a bit destabilizing. So and clearly dramatic enough for it to be visible from people standing watching the cars on the track. So yeah, as we pointed out yesterday, I think a bit of the word of the session.
Yeah, someone in chat there pointed out bendy wings. Wes saying bendy wings was the talk of 2021. It was, wasn't it? Flexy everything was what we're talking about. Gasly just gone through his 100, by the way. So there you go. He's another one through the century today. Where do you want to start today, Stuart? Because there's quite a bit to get through. Some quotes from drivers that we need to go over, but I feel like we probably ought to start with what I'm going to call the elephant in the room, really, because a lot of talk about the Russian Grand Prix and what's going to happen with that. F1 has issued a statement, so I think probably the best place to start there today.
Yes, I guess. Yeah, I mean, you can't really ignore it, can you? Because this is sort of calendar affecting and things. And there are sort of two fronts in which you can talk about whether or not we go to the Russian Grand Prix, and one of them is the that some people don't like to talk about, which is venturing into sort of politics and whether we should be like going to countries that do bad things. And the other is, I think, a more simple thing, which I think you can equate to Bahrain in 2011 or whenever we didn't go, which is it safe to go? And I think both of those things are going to come into play and be part of the big meeting that F1 and the teams are having at the end of the day about how they're going to approach this. But certainly complex, and especially for one of the teams in particular, I would say.
Yeah, we'll get to them in a moment. But yeah, like you said, there's a meeting going on tonight between teams and everybody with F1 to discuss what to do now. Obviously, a lot of pressure coming in now over the Russian Grand Prix and whether that should be going ahead given the events in Ukraine. F1 released a statement 4 hours ago that said F1 is closely watching the very fluid developments like many others, and at this time has no further comment on the race scheduled for September. We will continue to monitor the situation very closely. First of all, I'm not really sure what they're monitoring or what they're waiting for. I think the answer is pretty obvious. But what I would say, I'm not leaping to F1's defense here, but what I would say is there's probably quite a lot of legal loopholes and such that they've got to jump through. So they can't just come out and go, no, we're not going, it's all cancelled, done. They've got to follow. And I'm not comparing the two to COVID, but we saw last year with races being cancelled and particularly 2020, even though we knew days and weeks in advance, they had legal things they had to follow. So that's probably why we've just got that statement. I think it's highly probable that race is going to get cancelled because I just don't see how they can turn up for a race there given what's happening, whatever the situation is in September. We've had Sebastian Vettel as well say today that he will not, his mind is made up, he is not going to attend the Russian Grand Prix if Formula One chooses to go there in September. So they're going to face pressure from drivers. In fact, I'll read part of his quote for you. He said, "For myself, my own opinion is I should not go, I will not go," and then later goes on to say that his mind is made up on this one. So if drivers are starting to say that, Max Verstappen has said that we shouldn't be going there. So if they're saying that, the pressure is really going to start to ramp up on F1. But like I say, I think the decision has probably all but been taken. They just need to make sure they do it all properly legally. Unfortunately, they've got to be careful with these things, haven't they? They can't just come out and make a big statement. I mean, look at UEFA with the Champions League final. They're going to move that, but they've not, at least as far as I've seen, not officially confirmed that yet because they'll have legal things to jump through. It's a complex world we live in, Stuart, is the easiest way to put that.
It is. And I'm very mindful of, that we needn't necessarily turn this into an entire discussion of what's going on from a political point of view. But there are a lot of things they need to take into account. And you're right. I think not just from a contract or a legal point of view, but when you're a big organization, you don't have you're not nimble like an individual person. You don't have the flexibility like maybe Sebastian Vettel, even though I know he did talk to his team, or just, me, any random person of putting out a statement saying this is wrong or this is what we're doing, or I'm not going to this, or I'm boycotting X brand. That they need to actually meet as an organization and decide what to do, and they have partners and they have lots of things they're tied into. It's I think if you're of the persuasion that like big organizations need to be quick and come out with statements condemning this, that, or the other, there are complicated things they have to navigate before they can do that, even if they want to. So yeah, I think we'll see things develop. They do have I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse, really. The Russian Grand Prix is not for a while. It's later on in the season. It's September. It's just before we go off to Singapore.
Yeah.
In a way, this would be a whole lot easier if it was early on, like it has been in some seasons. And if it was like the fourth race or the fifth race, or whatever, they'd go like, okay, well, we're not going. Clearly, it's it's a bit dangerous out there right now. It's an escalating situation. We can do the thing they did with COVID, where maybe we'll postpone it, and they could actually it was easier to make a decision rather than having to do it with the knowledge that maybe things will be better in September. So yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. I would be surprised if we got a decision one way or another this week.
It's what's the word I'm looking for? So logistically, they've got time. I completely agree with what you're saying there. It's whether politically and ethically they've got time is really the big question mark, isn't it? And of course we'll find out in the coming days, weeks, whatever happens. I'm sure there'll be another statement at some point. They'll have to be. It's not something that people can hide away from. There's not much more to add on it, really. Other than that is the situation at the moment. There's a few question marks around. We'll talk about if it gets cancelled, potential replacements in a minute, because I've got something I want to talk about from somebody that I spoke to last night. But the other question mark is around Haas and what the next steps are going to be with regards to them. Gunther Steiner was supposed to be in the team principal's press conference. He was pulled from that. There is some talk that Haas will release a statement a little bit later today. So, of course, as soon as we get that, if we're live, we will go through it straight away. But difficult for them because, of course, they've got Russian sponsorship. But not just Haas. I mean, I've seen a lot of people talking about Haas, but you've got, I think Ferrari have got, is it Kaspersky? Are a Russian sponsor on their car, and there are others as well that have got sponsorship. So it's not just a Haas thing, but of course everyone's mind is going to go to Haas because there's Russian involvement there with Dmitry Mazepin obviously potentially owning part of that team. Big investment. The car is draped in the Russian flag, let's be honest. So really tricky situation for Haas.
And as far as I'm aware, Vladimir Putin is the chair of Uralkali. He's on the board.
Is he?
So I might need to double check that, but that's as far as I'm aware. So it's a bit more complex than maybe a Kaspersky sponsorship. But yeah. There's a lot people need to figure out, and I think honestly the situation might make itself more simply if the drivers who are more free to, I don't know, make decisions to speak their mind. If Vettel, who says he won't go, if Verstappen, who's made less strong hints, but talked about not wanting to go if there's a war going on. If the GPTA does come together and like unites to say they're not going to go this year, then that kind of like gives people an easier ride at cancelling it for this year. Because if the drivers aren't going to go, then clearly the value of the race drops, and it's easier for everyone on both sides to come to an agreement that we'll skip this year. So, yeah, like you say, there's not much more to add because it's all speculative, but that's sort of the situation as it stands, isn't it?
Yeah, a couple of things I want to add. You know what I'm like.
Okay.
I'm just going to go off on one in a minute if I'm not careful. But first things first, if you're on Twitter, please don't abuse at Haas F1 team, because if there's one thing we all know for sure, it's that the social media admin behind Haas have no control over this whatsoever. I think we've been here before with a certain driver at that team, but let's not abuse the admin there. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just there to do their job, bless them. So please don't be like that. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was obviously potential replacements. Now, last night, not for Haas, for the race. Last night, Turkey was sort of banded around as a possibility, and some people had shared some stuff from the F1 ticketing site. I then went and had a look around, and you could get to this Turkey page. After I had finished all that last night, after I finished talking to you, Stuart, about it, I had a chat with somebody, and apparently that is effectively kind of nonsense, in that it's basically a landing page that people go to for the Turkish Grand Prix tickets, and if you dig deep enough you could find things for like Portimao and things like that. So it's one of those, I suppose you could say, F1 contingency plans, in that if they do need to cancel a race or postpone a race, they've got not only a race they could bring in to fill that gap, but also they've got a page ready to go to sell tickets. So effectively, they're just covering their backsides with that, really, for any future problems. So as far as I can tell, and from the conversation I had, that is not confirmation that Turkey will replace Russia, even if it's highly possible that it will.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, there was a lot of confusion last night, and I definitely thought there was something going. Last night it felt like they were preparing something and accidentally made the page live. But I think, it just seems like either they have a bunch of contingency plans, or the CMS behind the scenes just rolls on any event that's on the calendar. So, Turkey and Portimao and stuff were on last year's calendar, and it probably just creates events for those in the database. So, yeah, I think don't expect a Turkish Grand Prix yet, even if it is the most obvious replacement, should we need it.
Yeah, you said that yesterday, didn't you? Logistically, it makes the most sense. So it probably, if it does get cancelled, it probably will be Turkey, but not expecting anything anytime soon on that. So we'll calm down a bit. I do love Istanbul Park. So I was kind of like, oh, it's quite, obviously the circumstances are not good, but to get Turkey back on the calendar will be fantastic because I really enjoy that track. So I was quite excited about that in the wrong ways last night, I suppose. But yeah, it turns out it was effectively... Is holding page the right... Something like that, holding page, basically. Just a contingency planning from F1, which is nice to see. Something they have been doing pretty well for the last couple of years. So, yeah, I'll come to you guys in chat in a moment if you want to put any questions to us. We're probably going to leave that there on Russia until we get some more information regarding the race. But if there's anything we've missed, please do point out and I'll give it a readout. On track, Vettel... Good mileage this afternoon, 44 laps when that was updated. So he's now on 45 laps. Wow. It took him a while to get to another one. He's out there doing some good laps. 122.7 still his fastest. Nikita Mazepin, he's back on track after stopping earlier with his fuel problem. Needs some laps today, up to 11 now. Like I said, Mick Schumacher 66. The 77 is better today. It's really just whether Alpha can get some laps in, but much better from them today in fairness compared to yesterday. Joe's done 46 this afternoon. And... where is he? Bottas did 21 this morning. Really glad to see. I've not got any pictures of him, unfortunately, because the site hadn't updated before I went live. But really great to see Guan Yu Zhou for the first time in an Alpha, Stuart. I'm quite looking forward to seeing what he can do this year. I know it's a few people think there should be a certain Oscar Piastri in that car, or at least somewhere on the grid. But I always get excited when we get a rookie in the sport because you never know what to expect. He could be absolutely phenomenal, or he might be terrible, or he might just be okay, but I'm looking forward to seeing him out there.
Yeah, I hope he does really well, honestly. And I think even if you're, one of many people who would thought Piastri deserved to be promoted to F1 the most of the junior drivers, I think we all have to hope that any driver that is in F1 does well, because we don't like seeing people prove that they prove essentially that they don't belong there and that they're better drivers there. We want to see all 20 drivers clearly showing they're the best of the best, top flight racing drivers. So I wish him all the best. I was originally a little bit surprised he wasn't in the car yesterday, but obviously with brand new cars, brand new rules, it's good to have two experienced people set the car up on day one. So yeah, great to see him out there. I don't think we'll expect to see giant killing laps in Barcelona, but I hope he feels confident and progresses from here.
Yeah, you got Kubica as well, haven't you? I think in his contract with them, he'll have so many testing and practice days he'll have to do, so they probably just got that out of the way nice and early in the morning. But good to see Kubica out there. Not that we got to see much of him. Mazepin's just jumped up to 12th place on a 122.429 on the C3 tyres again. Don't read too much into those times. I will go through times in that around about every half an hour, definitely. So some good news in the chat from Jonathan O'Keefe. Thank you very much for your super chat, mate. Says science reporting that it was easier to follow cars closely yesterday. So Jonathan's giving a cautious woohoo. I think cautious woohoo is probably what we should do through all of testing, really. So it sounds like cars might be a little bit easier to follow. I mean, it'd be, I wouldn't say a disaster, but it wouldn't be a great look for F1 if they've gone out their way to design cars that are closer to follow and they're not. But I suppose that's a team's job and an aerodynamicist's job, isn't it, to make their cars harder to follow. The problem is then you see a situation like Mercedes in the past where they design their car to be tough to follow and to be leading out front, and then they get stuck in the pack and they can't make their way through. So that's a positive there from Carlos' side. So that's absolutely good to hear. I'm going to just have a look through. Matthew just says Sepang. I'd love to see that place back. I really bloody would. I said it yesterday. Fantastic track. I don't think there's anything wrong with that track apart from the penultimate corner when you come out of that really fast left right and then suddenly you're slamming the brakes on into that tight right-hander to come onto that back straight. I think that's the only bit I don't like about that track. It's a fantastic one and great for racing as well. Nicholas wants to... go on then.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's genius in how hard it is as a corner. Like it's a real challenge, that corner. I hate it on the games, obviously, because it's so hard. But like I think it's like very clever how they've made a corner that's so hard to handle in a Formula One car.
No, that's. I mean, that to be fair, that's why I liked the Singapore Sling. The drivers didn't like it because it made them look stupid. But I liked that corner. But I was a really random point here. But I'm the same on the game with Malaysia. I can't remember which F1 game it was, but there was a little glitch you could take advantage of with that corner. Where if you were far, sort of back behind the leader or something, as the leader's coming to that corner, if you then do a flashback and then come back, the leader will go straight into the gravel. There you go. So if you ever play some older F1 games and fancy a cheeky win, that's how you do it. Anyway, Nicholas wants to know how the Mercedes are looking today. Hamilton did 40 laps this morning. Down in 13th in lap times, which of course don't matter. George Russell quicker this afternoon. Again, doesn't matter, but 30 laps, 6th place at the moment for him. So looking good in terms of lappage. And I think from what Sky was saying yesterday and what I watched on the Autosport YouTube channel with Luke Smith, it sounds as though Ferrari and Mercedes are looking the best and the most stable through the corners, and Fernando Alonso reporting that the Alpine isn't doing quite so well out there in terms of handling. So that's, I would say, Mercedes and Ferrari, forgetting lap times and just from what the reports are saying from how they look on track, are probably looking in the best shape at the moment. Of course, I'm going to say that very, very cautiously.
Yeah, the Alpine is one of the worst offenders for the porpoising as well, I've been hearing from looking at them. So could be related. I'm also hearing Alpine haven't really been from the sound of the car and also the speed traps. It sounds like Alpine or Renault, I guess, haven't turned their engine all the way up yet. They're sort of lagging behind some of the other cars in how they're managing their power units. So I think we haven't seen the full potential of that Alpine yet. If they can find it at some point.
Yeah, and I hope we do, because I keep saying my dark horses are not so much anymore. They're bright pink, but dark horses for 2022. I think they've got the potential to be quite good. I've said before, something quite exciting about the idea of a brand new rules package, a brand new power unit, and Fernando Alonso that gets me a little bit giddy. I'm not gonna lie. So really, really hoping they can get it together. So yeah, I think. To say Alpine are looking the worst, I wouldn't say that, but I think just some of the stuff that Alonso's reported back is a little bit concerning. But, we've got the rest of today, all day tomorrow, and then 3 days in Bahrain for them to iron out any issues like that. So, actually, I will say, Karun Chandok made a good point today, which I think he's bang on with. I know we've got 3 days of testing this year 6 days because of the new regs, but Karun Chandok making it pretty clear on Twitter that because of the reliability we've had, going forward, 3 days of testing should be absolutely plenty for these teams, because they're not stopping every couple of hours with an engine problem or a gearbox problem for the most part. They're getting the laps in. So because we're getting so many in, we don't want them to have quite so much testing time, because then you get to Bahrain and everything's nice and ready to go and it's all nicely set up and perfect. You want them to have fewer days, so when they arrive, they're still battling parts of their car, because that adds to the show, doesn't it? And I know that's selfish from a fan's perspective. As an engineer, you want all the time on track you can get, but from a fan's perspective, you want as much unpredictability as possible, don't you?
Absolutely. And from this point of view, I don't really care about the engineers. I care about the engineers in that I don't want them to be overworked, but I also, from the 25, 26 races a year perspective, but in terms of giving them a hard time trying to work out how to make their cars work, yeah, limit them. I like the limiting of them. And we don't need, from a seeing cars on track perspective, we don't need days and days of testing, because we've got 23 races this year, maybe 24 next year. So yeah, give them a hard time, make them work for their money. I think this year is a little bit of an exception. I know we got some good reliability, but they are working out the rules, and I think we are going to see heavy development throughout the season, even probably between the two testing sessions we got between Barcelona and Bahrain. So it's not like they're going to get their cars all sorted out in Barcelona and they'll turn up with the same cars in Bahrain, and it'll just be about pounding in the lap times and tuning the cars in. They're going to turn up in Bahrain with bits they've seen on other cars and trying them out on their own, and philosophies that have inspired them from what we've seen these days. So it's going to be quite frantic, even if we don't get a lot of stoppages and we get lots of laps in. I think there's going to be a lot of fiddling with these cars and getting the best out of them before we go racing, and then even after we go racing. So it's a stressful but hopefully good time for the engineers.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you say there about 24 races next year, and obviously we care about the engineers and that we don't want them to be absolutely worked to the bone, working their fingers to the bone all year round, do we? But I mean, how big do we think this calendar can get? I think that the rules say 25 is a maximum. Somebody, was it Stefano Domenicali? Somebody said that the calendar has the potential, or F1 has the potential for up to 30 races a season. I think that's utter madness. I'd much rather, I mean, if I'm honest, I'd rather see 20. I think 20 is a nice round number, but if they're going to go to 25 with one of those races being on rotation, so one year you'll get an Imola, another year you'll get a Portimao, another year you might get a Nürburgring, for example, something like that. I think that might work, but I think 25 races for me is surely the absolute maximum they can go to, because otherwise you're pushing into half a year, aren't you? Or every other week for a whole year.
Oh yeah, and not only do you work the teams to the bone, which is either making their working environment extremely painful and stressful, or increasing their cost because they have to pay for like two teams that sort of, switch places. They shifts essentially. One team goes to this race, the next team goes to the next race, and on top of the sort of stress for the teams, you fatigue the viewers. I mean, as much as we all love F1, I think a bunch of us were kind of glad to have a bit of a breather, as short as it is over the winter. There are parts of the season, the way they have to shove these races in back to back, where it is quite exhausting. And I think it's even quite exhausting for like people who aren't like us, who have to like schedule their work around it. If you're a fan, you still have to like dedicate a large chunk of your weekend to Formula One. And if it's doing, double weekends constantly, triple headers, that's a lot. And when you're bringing in new viewers, I don't know if everyone is prepared to commit that much to this sport. So yeah, there's a balancing act there. I think 25 is the absolute maximum. I think 2021 was a very good balance. I don't think we're going back there anytime soon, but I don't want to push it too hard.
No, and there is fatigue. I mean, we all love racing. That's why I watch it, don't we? So we all love Formula One, but you can have too much of a good thing. It is possible. Just look at me and cake. I shouldn't eat anywhere near as much as I do. But yeah, I think 25 is the upper limit for me. But I'd like 20. It's easy for maths, so that's pure selfish. And I think it's just a nice round number. It feels about right, 20 as a maximum. But I mean, look, it's all about money, isn't it? If they can make money and get the balance right for staff, even if teams have to start employing 2 crews, then they're just going to keep adding races, aren't they? So, we've got 23 now, could be even more in the future, and then you've got sprint races thrown on top of that. So it's all going to come down to cash. Cash is king, as Lewis Hamilton, I think it was, has said many a time. We'll just have a look at the times, because I've just had a message in chat. Bonk sticker. There you go. It says, why is Ocon not on the list? Just the top 10 in these ones. When we do the Bahrain streams over here, the full 8 hours, I'll have a full list, proper live timing style list there for every single driver. We'll just do the top 10 for these shorter streams. So at the moment, Daniel Ricciardo is still top of the timesheets with a 1:20.355. He set that on the C3 tyre this morning, and it's on a total of 101 laps. So confetti for Ricciardo going over the century. Carlos Sainz second place, not in the car this afternoon, 1:20.5 for him on the C3 tyre, 71 laps. 106 laps for Gasly in third place. For AlphaTauri, 1:20.764, that was C3 tyre. Vettel has jumped up to fourth place this afternoon, 1:20.7, that was set on the C3 tyre, 49 laps in total. Alex Albon, fifth place for Williams, 1:21.531, C3 tyre, 47 laps. He's not in the car this afternoon. Charles Leclerc is in for Carlos Sainz, already done 37 laps. Not quite as impressive as Vettel there, but still. 121.7 on the C3 tyre. Russell is 7th. He's in for Hamilton this afternoon. 121.8 C2 tyre, 30 laps. Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. 121.894 C3 tyre, 39 laps. Lance Stroll, 9th place. 121.9 on the C3 tyre, 55 laps. 66 laps this morning for Mick Schumacher at 121.9 C3 tyre. Bottas is 11th for Alfa Romeo. 122.288. That was on the C3 tyre, 21 laps. Sergio Perez, 38 laps for Red Bull, 122.412, and of course brought out the first red flag of testing with a gearbox issue. That's sorted now. C2 tyre set that fastest time on Mazepin. He is 13th, 122.429. He's in for the afternoon. C3 tyre with that one, 18 laps so far. Lewis Hamilton did the morning session, 40 laps. His fastest time was set on the C2 tyre, and that was a 122.562. Esteban Ocon, for those asking, 15th place for Alpine, 123.280. C2 tyre for that one, 112 laps. So not an amazing lap time. Again, it's testing, so it doesn't matter, but lots of laps on the board. In fact, the most of anybody at the moment. And Guan Yu Zhou, 16th for Alfa Romeo, 123.6. C2 tyre, 46 laps. So actually, Stuart, Bottas did 21 this morning, not many laps at all yesterday for Alfa, but 46 this afternoon for Zhou. So they've been having a few little, I think they said, niggling problems, which apparently they had some issues with at the shakedown, but it looks as though this afternoon at least, knock on wood for Alfa, they might have them resolved. 46 laps for Zhou.
That's good to see. That's good. That sounds like that's a lot, actually, considering he's in the second. Yeah, good for him. And good for Alfa. And hopefully Haas and Alfa will have a good rest of their session.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's that? 46 laps for him. So Vettel's done 49 this afternoon. So he's up there, actually, to be fair. Zhou was one of the drivers who's done the most laps, so that's good news for Alfa. They need the laps. I think we'll see a lot of them the rest of today and tomorrow, because they're going to have to make up for what was a disappointing day yesterday, definitely. So, yeah, that's your order. I'll go through it again in about half an hour's time. If those, I know some people drop in and drop out of the stream, so best way to do that. Ashish, thank you very much for your super chat. It says, how do teams come up with their run plans? Do we know what run plans different teams are on? Norris mentioned that he was fastest because they were on a different run plan from others, hence why I'm asking. So I don't honestly have an answer for that one. I would guess the answer is we don't really know in testing about run plans. We often hear about them in practice, we've been high fuel today or whatever, longer runs, and you sort of tell a bit more. But in testing, particularly when you can't watch it, it's kind of hard to tell on run plans, isn't it? Unless you've seen some info anywhere, Stuart, that gives us an idea.
No, I mean, from the outside, we can only sort of speculate what their run plans are. In terms of, I think Ashish said, how do teams come up with their run plans? Yeah. The teams will have particular things they'll want to monitor and gather data on. Some of the things will be quite broad, like how the car operates under high fuel and long running, as the tires go through their whole life cycle. Some other things will be like just testing parts on the car, like different wing setups or different variations of like bodywork. You'll have noticed that some of the cars have been like swapping and swapping out cooling louvres or gills on the side of the car, things like that. And they'll be just, testing little things like that. They'll go out for like little runs and then gather data on that and change things up. So they'll have a strategy that allows them to fit in as many different types of tests as possible. Maybe stacking things together in their runs. But as for what they're doing, it's kind of hard to tell. Even really at the end of the day, when you kind of look back at the day and think, what were they doing? If Alpine did an uninterrupted run of 60 laps, then they were probably doing it. Well, you can't really do 60 laps, but that kind of thing. Then they were probably doing race simulations and high fuel things. And you sort of look at what aero rakes are on the car, what tires they're using, and so on, and how they're operating things like DRS, just to get a feel for what they're doing. But it is very hard from an outsider perspective to know for sure what they're doing. But yeah, that's how teams approach it. They'll come up with a strategy that allows them to test everything they need to test. because this isn't, this isn't their first days of testing. Their
No.
first days of testing are in the simulator, in the wind tunnel. They've already gathered data, and now they need to confirm a lot of things that they think they know about the car. And as we're seeing, some of the teams are getting surprised. Porpoising, in particular, being one of the things that seems to have caught a lot of people out. So yeah, just what they're doing today. A lot of this stuff is confirming data they think they know about their cars, and then they'll go away and work on that.
Checo Perez is back out on track, for those that have been asking in chat. So he did a few exploratory laps for Red Bull, and Autosport's blog are describing it as not the smoothest of days for the team, which is definitely the case, especially compared to yesterday's running from Max Verstappen. So Perez is back out there, currently on 43 laps and down in 12th place in terms of lap times. So see if he can pop some times in and more importantly, get those laps on the board. So yeah, everything okay. He did have to stop on track earlier if you're just tuning in. First red flag of the session because he had a gearbox problem, which they said was resolved, but it's taken a while to get him up and running again properly. So there you go. Definitely looking better for Checo now than it was maybe half an hour ago. So that's good news for him. I want to talk about sprint races at some point today, Stuart, if you're up for that.
Yeah,
I
sure.
know they're a bit contentious, but we've got some changes to that this year for anyone who's missed that one. And it's just because Legacy Watch Guy has said it's sprint qualifying. Remember, it's not a race. Actually, this year it's just called sprint because it's not qualifying, but it's all got. They've somehow managed to take something that wasn't all that confusing, but did cause some confusion and somehow make it really confusing because that is what F1 do. Nicholas wants to know what our favourite livery is. It's the Ferrari. Everything's a Ferrari for me. So there you go. Have you got a favourite livery, Stuart?
I like what Ferrari have done. I've kind of always wanted them to go slightly darker red, since the old Marlboro days, and we know they've left Philip Morris behind finally. I like the Aston. The Aston is what I think it should have been last year, but they were obviously had a bit of sponsor. They had to put BWT on there somewhere. I like the Alpine, but I don't like it as much as I think I could like it if it was a little bit better. I think they also are kind of tied in a little bit to how they have to promote BWT, but in theory, those two colors should work really well together. And I just don't think it's quite as exciting as it could be. But livery design is a complicated thing. You can't just put you can't do what people do when they post their like dream liveries on Twitter. You need to actually build a brand and promote sponsors and make everything legible. It's kind of sadly, perhaps you can't always have the dream livery, but it's nice. I quite like it, and I like that they're doing a kind of weird reverso color car for the first couple of races, even though it looks exactly like the Racing Point did. Yeah, I think I'd probably go Aston Martin this time round. I'm very intrigued as to what people think on a whole. I know almost every livery has been somewhat contentious, a little bit Marmitey.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the Ferraris, I like that they've gone back to the black wings. It reminds me of the Ferraris of the 90s. Because 2000 they went with the white wing, didn't they, from sort of 2000 onwards, and then they went all red and then came back with so I quite like they've gone that and it's a little bit darker. But just on livery design is interesting because they get given, from what I understand, that these designers, they're not told, right, here are your colours, go and have some fun. They are told, this is what the sponsor wants specifically. You need to follow this. And that's why you end up with sometimes some great liveries and sometimes some absolute shockers. But the Alpine livery, I didn't like it in the renders. I think it looks much better out on track. There you go. I might put some pictures on for you now. It's not really scrolling. I didn't realise. Sorry, guys. There you go. Some more it wasn't scrolling for some reason. There we go. But yeah, so I like it out on track, but I didn't like it in the renders. But I really like the pink version, and I kind of want them to stick with that because it was either you or Dan said yesterday, if you're going to go with BWT, go all in. Or somebody in chat might have said it, but the only problem with that is, do I like it because it's basically a Racing Point? That's not really great for them to take Otmar Safnauer and then just steal their livery from a couple of years ago. But the thing with BWT and the thing with Aston was that they didn't like the lack of pink, did they? And they wanted a proper presence on the car, whereas Aston just had the little pink stripes, and they didn't like that, and I think that's possibly why that came to an end. And I don't think Lawrence Stroll and the people of Aston Martin wanted Aston Martin to be driving around in a pink car because, men. Sorry, that didn't mean to come out. Yeah, because you know what people are like, but I just think it's a different green as well, isn't it? On the not the stripes on the Aston, but it's a lighter shade of Aston green, if you want to call it that. I heard on Sky yesterday, so it definitely pops a lot more than it did last season, which is one of their concerns. But yeah, I get what you're saying about the Aston, but I just bloody love that Ferrari. But I think I just love every bit of it, and that's why it can do no wrong, that Ferrari this year. So bias warning.
No, I agree. I think the Aston definitely needed to be a lighter pink as well, because it on TV it had a tendency to kind of like become black. I think, especially depending on like which angle you were looking at it from, and it's sort of the problem with the darker cars is they all look alike on the TV, especially on the long shots. You need to kind of pop, and that's when Aston took over Racing Point. I was like happy because I was like, oh, a nice, racing green car back on, because it's iconic and cool. But I was sad that the pink was going, and I think the pink does look very cool on an F1 car. That it's bright and it's distinct. I think the Bahrain Saudi livery for that Alpine is going to pop and be more obvious what it is than the livery used for the rest of the year, because I think it's probably going to sort of fade into one of those dark cars. And if you sort of see an Alpine and an Aston Martin coming towards you on the camera, it might not be immediately obvious which one is which. So I like that in the last few years we've seen teams embracing a sort of quite strong color identity, but I'd like to see it sort of more, maybe a bit brighter. I got a question. I was going to ask you yesterday, actually. What do you think of McLaren's sort of kind of golfy colors, but not properly committing to a golf livery thing?
Before I answer that, sorry, Leclerc it's not updated on the timing yet. Leclerc's just gone fastest on a 1:19.8 on the C3 tyre. So that's a 1:19.804 on the C3 tyre from Charles Leclerc. So that should update on the timing shortly. He set a new fastest time. So good stuff from Charles.
Is that the first 19 of the... Did we have 19s yesterday? I can't remember.
That is a fantastic question. I had this open a minute ago. Just it was there and I didn't read it. Let me have a look. So, that's no use.
Put you on the spot there.
That is no use to you, sure, whatsoever. So Barcelona day one times. I'm reading my file names here. 1:19.568 from Norris was the fastest yesterday. So we are just nearly there, 0.3 off ish. So Norris just marginally quicker yesterday.
Cool. Well, there we go. We'll see how that develops.
I'm not confident we're going to get in the 17s, which was my prediction yesterday.
Yeah, we all were, weren't we? Oh well.
That's what drinking does to you. No, McLaren. I didn't like it when I saw the pictures at the launch. I think it looks better out on track, but it's a bit like... So actually, going back to what I was saying about the Alpine and how if you're going to partner with BWT, go all in and really get that pink car, I feel like if McLaren wanted a Gulf-style livery, and of course, things are more complicated than I'm going to make it sound, try and get a big sponsorship deal with Gulf. Gulf, McLaren, Mercedes, lovely livery that we saw in Monaco would have been fantastic. I feel like it's kind of a bit of a, not a bodge job or half-baked. Well, I suppose it is half-baked in a way in that they didn't get the deal with Gulf or didn't go for a deal with Gulf, so they've kind of gone as close as they can without upsetting the sponsor. But no, I'm not sold on it, but what I will say is, going back to your point on you're going to spot a pink car, and like when we had Jordan with yellow, you're going to spot them. You're not going to miss a McLaren, are you? You could probably sit at home in the UK and see the shine from the McLaren if you look towards Barcelona right now. It is that bright, it's ridiculous, that papaya. Mm-hmm. So at least you ain't going to miss them, I suppose, is the positive there. But I'm not a fan. But weirdly, it looks better on the IndyCar, the version of the IndyCar livery.
It does.
I think
the blue version.
Yeah.
It was interesting that they changed their blue into that kind of, I don't know what you call it. Is it a duck egg blue? I'm not up on all my blues, but a paler, lighter blue that very much resembles the Golf blue without fully committing to it because they had a darker, deeper blue last year. So I mean, I quite sort of like it as a thing that they've put it across all of their racing teams this year. But yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it. I quite like it, but I'm also it feels like one of those liveries that could have been better. Like it's full of brimming with potential.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that one. Absolutely. Yeah. I actually think we've got a great looking car grid this year in terms of liveries and in terms of car design and so much variety, like we were talking about yesterday, that I think visually we're in for a bit of a treat this year. I don't know what the racing's going to be like, but I think visually we're in for a treat this year. So good stuff from all. I mean, even like the Haas livery, it is an evolution of last year's livery, but as the season went on, I really liked that livery on that car. So I can't say I dislike it or anything like that. It's weird. It's just not changed all that much. But then, the Mercedes livery, for example, back to silver, but I'd say they've gone grey rather than silver because I'm going to be really pedantic like that because I think they've gone with a slightly more matte finish than usual, haven't they? But did you catch the testing notebook yesterday? Because Ted Kravitz was absolutely on one about how he thinks the Mercedes of all the cars is the one that more closely resembles the 2021 design, that it looks like it, what's the phrase he used? Looks like it came from just a standard Mercedes family of cars, like something that they could have designed last year, even though obviously it's completely different.
Yes, I did hear him saying that. And actually that was, I wrote that down yesterday as something to say when we were chatting it, but it didn't slot into, and I can't remember to say stuff. I tend to agree, and it is, we were talking yesterday about all the different designs, and obviously we talked about the more radical ones, about how the Red Bull came out of the box with like a very aggressive design, and Ferrari with their weird side pods and so on, and AlphaTauri looks great. We didn't chat about Mercedes, and I think that's because it just looks like the most conservative car. It looks, there's not a lot of nothing stands out from it in particular. That doesn't mean it is a conservative design or that it isn't, cleverly put together as a package. But it's if that had been the first car to come out, you would have been like, oh, okay, it's kind of similar to what we had before. It's not a big leap forward. It's very, very slim. It's very slim. Some of these cars are big, broad-shouldered side pods sticking out. This car is slim all the way down, which is interesting. I think those are the sort of two philosophies we got. We got like, big broad side pods, sharp undercut, and then cars that are sort of keeping themselves quite compact. And that's kind of a cooling thing and an airflow thing. But yeah, I mean, again, time will tell whether they've come up with the right idea. They are a world apart from Red Bull. So it'd be interesting to see if those two cars are like toe to toe at the front again, because they've clearly gone in different directions over their bodywork, at least.
Wouldn't it be, I mean, maybe Fantasyland here, but wouldn't it be incredible to see technical experts trying to break down what's the best way to go if Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes are all very evenly matched? Because they're just such radically different cars. You'd be sort of like, well, which works? Apparently all of them. And then you might see some weird hybrids from Williams or something. They might be like, have a Ferrari nose, a Mercedes side pod, and a Red Bull barge board setup or something like that. It'd be quite funny to see what hybrids people come up with if we get three designs that are so evenly matched. But that's Fantasyland. It's not going to. No, it will happen. It will happen. We will have 3 or 4 teams fighting at the front. Let's be positive, Sean, for goodness sake.
I mean, I think we spoke about this in DMs, I think. And I mean, I'm not saying this will happen, but my hope is that there is no single best way to interpret these regulations. And you can have radically different designs that all equate to a fast car. Now, these may... this performance may express itself differently. You may have some cars that faster around the high speed bends, or better at following, or higher top speed, or whatever however they exhibit their performance. But I think it's very possible that you could have Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, who have gone in three different directions and all making it work and fighting with each other, and maybe having a bit of ebb and flow as you go to different types of tracks. But that's the dream, isn't it? And because that means you won't then, over the next few seasons, have all the teams converging onto one look and one design. You'll have teams exploring all these different ways of designing your car, which will be really cool to see.
We'll find out in Bahrain, I guess. But I hope so. I'm going to try and be more positive. I've got it in my head we're going to end up with a 2014 situation where one team's going to smash it. But I suppose the difference here is that it's not going to be quite so power unit dependent. That was all about the new power units. I mean, we had the aero changes as well, but it was more about the new power units, whereas this is all aero. So I think there's more scope for teams to take a customer to someone like Mercedes is going to struggle to find performance because Mercedes is responsible for the power unit, versus a team like Williams now who could go completely radical with their aero and steal a march on those around them. So I'm hoping that's what we get and we don't get a 2014. So I'll try and be positive, I promise. A couple of personal bests were popped in after Leclerc's fastest time. So Gasly did a 1:20.542 and Zhou a 1:22.888, which puts him ahead of Ocon. So Zhou did that on the C2 and Gasly did that on the C3. Just having a quick read through the blog to see if there's anything I've missed that's hugely important. Not really. So yeah, just Ferrari and McLaren out there trying to get the best time of the day or the best time of the test. We'll see. But yeah, like I say, that fastest time by Leclerc, about 3/10 off what Norris did yesterday. I'll run through the times again very, very shortly, but I did see a question. So it's Jack just asking there, says apparently Vettel has apparently said that Massey has been thrown under the bus. I think that was Verstappen. I'm just going to check.
He did. It is Verstappen, yeah, and he corrected himself as well down the line.
He corrected himself.
Verstappen. He did. He did. Yeah. A bit further down the chat.
Oh, Jack. Sorry, Jack. I thought you meant Max. I was like, where did he see that?
No. Jack corrected that it was Verstappen in the chat. No, Verstappen's in the chat. He's taking it all back.
Max, go away. No. Yeah, so he said he doesn't think it's correct that Massey... hang on, let me just try and find out. So Verstappen, who was facing the media for the first time since clinching the title, offered thoughts on the situation at the first 2020 test, says he doesn't think it's correct. Everybody always tries to do the best job. Everyone can always use help. Says that Michael Massey was really being thrown under the bus, and now they did sack him. It is unacceptable. For Max, he feels that's unacceptable and sacked him. He finds it really incredible and feels really sorry for Michael because he thinks he was a very capable and good race director. He has nothing against the new race directors because I think they are also very capable and very good race directors. But personally, and for Michael, I felt really sad and I sent him a text as well. I mean, I'm not overly surprised that Max is quite a fan of Michael Massey. Sorry, jokes aside, obviously, but an interesting line because so far, I mean, some drivers came out in support a few weeks ago, didn't they, before all this was announced and saying that, you know, it's a tough job and Michael Massey, aside from what happened in Abu Dhabi, has done a good job. I think we don't get to see the whole thing, so maybe he has, but from what we see, I think there have been some other dodgy moments from him. Forget Abu Dhabi for a minute. There were some really bizarre calls at times that my mind instantly goes to restarting practicing or qualifying in Turkey when there was a car and a crane still on track. Things like that, but that could have been a miscommunication. It might just be that... I just feel that Massey's position, whether you agree with the fact he was sacked or not, I feel like his position was untenable because... how can we go to this first race of the season? You know, Lewis Hamilton does something a bit cheeky and probably should get a penalty. How can he then give him a penalty? I know that should be separate and the race director should just apply the rules. But I don't see how he could have continued in that role. So I'm glad he's got a job somewhere else in the FIA, but I completely understand why the FIA felt a change needed to be made. Ted made the point last night as well. We don't have the full report yet, so it may well be that this was all planned, that it was always going to get a job somewhere else in the FIA, and that the new president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, was going to bring in his own team anyway. So it may all be coincidence. I don't think it is, but I kind of... I struggle with the term thrown under the bus, because I don't think that's the right term. I don't feel like that was the case. I feel like, if you want me to be... brace yourself for typical British bias. If you want me to be honest, I think it's more that Michael Massey threw himself under the bus. If I'm being honest with what happened in Abu Dhabi, and the stewards backed him up on that, and I just don't feel like he could have continued as race director. So I think bringing in somebody else was the right thing to do. Whether or not bringing in two people was the right thing to do, I'm a bit concerned that'll breed a bit of inconsistency, because what one race director says is acceptable, another might not agree, and that's going to bring some inconsistency. But hopefully then that is where this new, let's call it F1 VAR, this new control they're going to bring in is really going to help them with that consistency, because they're going to have people there that know the rules, can quickly say, you have to do this, you can't do that, you need to do this, we did this last time. They have a precedent there as well. I think, if I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, but I think there is going to be a kind of, at least somebody there who deals in precedent and say, well, at the last race we gave a penalty for that, so we need to do it now, or we advise, or whatever. So I think that will help big time. But I can see a few hiccups in the opening race of the season, and a bit of inconsistency coming in, because you've got two people at the top potentially making different decisions, and that's going to cause problems. But hopefully it'll be okay. I think they've got... I don't really know the two new race directors very well, but from what I understand, they're both massively experienced, so that's good. And Herbie Blash coming back in as well, that's going to help. So, yeah, did you agree, Stuart, that you think that Massey's position was a bit untenable in the end, or should he have been given another shot at that one? It was a hard role to fill. We've said that before, stepping into Charlie's shoes.
I think it's a very complicated situation, and I think a lot of this isn't helped by the fact that the largest, most vocal proponent proponent for getting rid of Massey were Lewis Hamilton fans, and Massey's biggest defenders were Red Bull and Verstappen. That isn't that wasn't helpful for sort of like looking into this in a sort of balanced way, because it does look like, you know, Hamilton fans are out to get him, and Red Bull just want to defend him because obviously of the way Abu Dhabi went for both of those sides. So I think you have to kind of like put all that aside. As we've spoken about before, like you said, Massey did have some issues. I think there were issues with that race direction. I agree to a certain extent that he was thrown under the bus, but if with the stipulation that we actually don't know, like FIA haven't said we've got rid of Massey because of all this. I think there was an untenable aspect in just how he was perceived, kind of the bad light he was reflecting on the FIA, whether it was his fault or not. I think it was a tricky position for him to be in. But, you know, we have spoken before about how it's a tough gig and he needed more support, and we needed a better structure in that race direction stewarding booth, because it's a tough job. And there's been a lot of arguments in the last couple of months about the pressure of that job, particularly with people shouting in your ear. And, you know, there's an argument like, well, you should be able to be up to the job and up to the pressure. And to a certain extent, but it's better to remove that pressure and make the job easier to do because it's so important. I would have been very happy, because we're clearly moving to two race directors now. I know they're not going to be there at the same time, but they're going to alternate. But if they'd have said Massey will do some, and I can't remember the people's names off the top of my head, but one of them will do, you know, if there were two race directors and Massey was one of them, that would have been fine. If Massey had continued, but we've got this kind of virtual stewarding race direction booth at the FIA, I think that would have been fine as well. So I think it looks like Michael Massey has taken a lot of the brunt of this himself, when I think we can all agree there were bigger sort of systemic problems that they're trying to fix. And I think, as much as I love Herbie Blash coming back in, as sort of being that kind of like senior advisor, getting a 73-year-old man out of retirement is not a long-term solution. But
No.
hopefully they are building something up. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Michael Massey had some problems. There were some systemic issues there they needed to fix. It, it. I think if I was Michael Massey, I would feel a bit aggrieved at how it looks at the optics. But I think they had to refresh. They had to do something new. They had to look like they were changing things up and listening to criticisms. And I think Michael Massey took the hit for that, fairly or unfairly.
I think as well, even if they decided to stick with Massey, I think they needed to do the other things they've done anyway. Bring in some support for him. Whoever the race director is, they need support. We have, we live in a world now where we've got all this technology, and the sport is this so proud of all the technology it's got and all the systems they have in place, and we were still relying on one person really running things. And I think Massey came in, took Charlie Whiting's role, and probably didn't realise, as we've said before, just how much Charlie Whiting was doing. Stuff that Charlie Whiting had adopted over the years, rather than, when he came into the role, Charlie wasn't given all these roles. He just kind of absorbed them as part of his role over time as people left. And, we've all had it in work situations before where people leave. It's like, oh, Sean can do that. That's kind of how it was with Charlie. And then that was always going to be difficult for Michael to step into. So he needed support, but that support needed to come earlier, and it just never did. And I think they got away with it for as long as they could, is I suppose how you could look at that. But they needed some support in there. And I'm just going to take a point out of chat here. It's from Spaces. How do you expect a race director to make objective decisions when team principals are constantly interjecting in the decision-making process? One of the best things, in my view, to come out of this is the FIA saying now that the lobbying to the race director from teams stops. There is no more of that. They can still get in touch and they can still say, ask a question to race control, but it has to be within specific guidelines. They can't be lobbying all the time, so we're not going to get any more of this. No, Michael, this isn't right, and we only need one more lap. We're not going to get any more of that. That's all been stopped now, because that was crazy. Not just Abu Dhabi, but I think, was it Jeddah, when it was one of the messiest races I've ever seen in modern day F1. They were all over the radio. That had to stop, and it is being stopped. So that is the good news on that one. So I'm going to say something before I go through the times again, and I hope people understand. Can we move on? Can we kind of draw a line under this now? People will never forget Abu Dhabi, and there are people that will never let it go. But we can't be talking about this every single week. We have no more information now until the FIA report is released, which could be tomorrow, could be next week, could be next month. It could be probably never. In fact, I will predict that we probably never see it, or it's something that gets released in a year's time when everyone's forgotten about it. We need to move on. 2022 is here. We've got changes to race control. People who wanted Massey out, Massey has gone. People who wanted changes to race control, that's come in. The FIA just needs to get that report out, and we can just get on with it now, because otherwise we're going to be talking about this for 20 years. I mean, I won't be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good shout.
I mean, I say I won't be. 20 years, I'll only be 55. I won't be dead. Make that sound like I'm really old then. Good afternoon to Aldas, mate. It says, great seeing the testing streams back. Sean and Stuart. You'll have to let me know if you want to come on any of them. I think we're due our yearly stream, aren't we? And our yearly 6.5 hour catch up. Good to see you, mate. Hope you're well. Let's run through these times from today so far then. Not a lot changing since the last time, other than Leclerc is now top, 1:19.8. I think that's quite a big thing to chase, to be fair. C3 tyres for his fastest time, 50 laps so far on the board. Ricardo, 113 laps in total today. C3 tyre, 120.355. Also got... have we got an echo? 1 second. Let me just address. There we go, sorted it. Ricciardo 120.355, C3 tyre, 113 laps. Gasly 120.542. C3 tyre for that fastest time, 119 laps. 71 laps for Carlos Sainz, 120.546. C3 Vettel 127.84 up into 5th place. C3 tyre for that, 55 laps. Albon 47 laps, 121.531 C3 tyre. Russell 7th place for Mercedes, 121.734. C2 43 laps. Come on, George, I want you to get 77 laps again today just for the lols. Latifi 8th place, 121.894. C3 51 laps. 55 laps for Lance Stroll, 121.920. That was done on the C3 tyre. C3 tyre also for Mick Schumacher for his fastest time, 121.949, 66 laps. I keep saying it, much better day for Haas on track. Zhou up to 11th place now, 122.2, C3 tyre, 56 laps. 21 laps for Bottas for Alpha. Need to keep reminding myself, Valtteri Bottas is in an Alfa Romeo. People have already spotted it, but I've already put blue next to Russell on my tables. I will change that tomorrow back to the Mercedes teal or whatever they call it. Yeah. 52 laps for Perez, slower afternoon, but getting the laps in now. 122.4 C2 tyre. Mazepin's fastest time was a 122.429. That was done on the C3. 24 laps. Hamilton 122.562, 15th at the moment. That won't change because he's not out this afternoon. C2 tyre, 40 laps. 112 laps for Ocon in 16th place. Yeah, 123.280, and that was on the C2 tyre. So they are your times so far. 16 drivers in total today, 10 on screen. Don't worry if you watch the other streams. Bahrain, we will go back to a full live timing list. It'll either be from the Autosport or we'll come up with our own. I'm not sure what's going to happen yet. I need to check with Autosport. That's okay, really, rather than just assuming I can. I assume I can. But we'll have a full list there of all the drivers that are out there. But just for this, it's top 10. Please do drop a like. Always appreciated. We're at 185 likes, 945 watching. I don't think we'll get close to yesterday. We nearly hit 1,000 likes. So if we get that sort of 300-400, that'd be pretty awesome. So please do drop a like. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new. We are in subscriber-only chat today because, bots, but please do subscribe if you're new. Lots to come up. We're live again tomorrow afternoon, and content up to the second test, and then live for 8 hours a day during the second test. And then, of course, it's a season. It's all going to be pretty hectic, actually, in the coming weeks. So we've got this test, and then we've got kind of a quiet week, and then we've got second test or first test, whichever way you want to look at it, Drive to Survive, and then it's into 2 races back to back. So chaotic March. Stuff all to watch all winter, but don't worry, plenty to watch in March, that's for sure. Someone just asking for a Perez update there. Obviously just missed that one. 52 laps so far for him. He is out on track. He's had a quiet start to the afternoon because of an issue this morning where he stopped on track, but mostly reconnaissance laps for Red Bull this afternoon, but he's starting to put them in now. Gasly actually has moved up, as I say that, into second place, 120.0, and has completed 122 laps. That was on the C3 tyre, so not far off Charles Leclerc. So don't read into testing times for the millionth time, but if you do want to read into testing times, there you go. Leclerc v Gasly for the title. That'll do. I'd be happy with that one, I think. Leclerc versus Gasly for the title. I think the fans would love it. I think they're fairly popular drivers, aren't they? I don't pay a lot of attention on social media anymore, if I'm honest. I find Twitter a bit toxic.
They'd be popular up to a point. As soon as they started fighting for the title, the camps would take their place. And there'd be vicious anti-Gasly and anti-Leclerc groups of the fans.
That's true.
Going hammer and tong all year long. They'll find something.
No, that's the way it goes, isn't it? It's what is it? Is it? There's some sort of phrase I've read, like success breeds hate or something like that. People are going to hate a successful football team. They're going to hate a successful driver. I don't know why people feel the need to hate. Sean's going to start singing some kind of really crazy song now and try and chill us all out. I'm not. But yeah, I don't know why people feel the need to hate. You don't have to like everybody. God knows I don't. I like you, Stuart, by the way. I didn't mean that to sound like like I have a proper dislike of you. I don't at all. Should we talk about sprint races then? Or sprint qualifying, or the waste of time on a Saturday on certain weekends, as I'm going to start calling it. Changes for this year. We were supposed to get 6, which I think has messed up your predictions challenge already, Stuart. We were supposed to get 6. We've ended up with 3. They are going to be called sprint and not sprint qualifying to avoid confusion. We're also changing the rule so that the driver who sets the fastest time in Friday qualifying will be awarded pole position, but only statistically, because the driver who finishes first in the sprint will get actual pole position on Sunday. So we could be, and I've said this before, we could be in a situation in some sprint weekends where we end up with a driver who is awarded pole position who crashes out the sprint race and ends up starting 20th. Very bizarre. I know you could say, I suppose, Charles Leclerc was awarded pole position, wasn't he, for Ferrari in Monaco before he crashed and started, or didn't start as it turns out, but, you know, whatever. But I think it's for me, it's an unnecessary confusion and it bugs me. I think why not separate them completely? Pole position on Friday is pole position. Your qualifying on Friday sets the grid, and then Saturday you race for some extra points, and then on Sunday you go back to the Friday grid. Or, and I know chat will hate me for this one. Screw it. Let's reverse the top 10 on a Saturday and just have a race for some extra points. Oh, why does it have to be so complicated? It's not hard.
I think the reverse race thing could work well if it's detached from the Grand Prix. You know, have it just do it for the extra points. Everything else is based on qualifying. I think that could work well. I mean, what would work well is getting rid of them completely. But if we have to do them, I was a bit surprised that we didn't change more, to be honest. It just, they added a few more points. They changed what pole position means. I mean, pole position is kind of tricky anyway, isn't it? Because you could have the fastest lap on a normal qualifying session, but have a gearbox change in the pipeline that puts you back 5. It's all a bit confusing anyway. I think it's fine. Like if you're going to do sprints, it's fine, but it's not setting the world alight, is it? No one's jumping for joy that this has solved all the problems we have with sprints. I'm surprised they're doing it at Imola. Because, I mean, it's been more fun racing than I thought it would be, but it's still a tricky place to overtake. So it sort of just seems like we're going to have a little bit of a 20-lap procession on the Saturday instead of a good old-fashioned qualifying session. But, whatever. Also, Imola's not one of the... I would have thought they would have done them in places where they are like really hyping up the track, the venue,
Miami,
like Miami. Like it just seems an odd place. I mean, I'm surprised Imola's still on the calendar, to be honest. It's all very confusing to me. But yeah, it just seems a very odd decision.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot. So there's Brazil. I forgot now. So it's Brazil, Imola, and where's the third one? I've forgotten. I had this memorized. You know what I'm like with stuff like this. I normally memorize this kind of stuff, and then people ask me a question that matters, and I won't know. Excuse my keyboard tapping. I can't remember what it was now. They're going to tell me in chat before I even get there.
About where the 3 are?
Yeah.
They kept Brazil.
Yep.
They got Imola. I fear
Austria.
Oh yeah, that's a little bit weird, but yeah. I kind of get it because Austria's normally quite fun, and you at least get those like first couple of corners, which are fun on the opening lap. So you get more of that. There you go, chats. Too late, chat. We got there on our own.
Yeah, keep up, chat. Yeah, we've also got more points as well, which I think will hopefully make drivers more... What's the word I'm looking for? More inclined to go for a move, because I just don't feel like... People disagree with me all the time on this because they're like, well, it's another position on the grid, but I don't really see the point if you are, P12 of slinging it up the inside of the driver in P11, risking an accident with a do or die move for nothing. And I kind of feel the same if you're 6th. Why risk the rest of your weekend for a move for 5th? But at least now the top 8 are going to get points. So it's suddenly, whilst 1 point may not make or break your season, And there's still going to be an element of it's not really worth it, maybe trying that risky move, like a Ricciardo-style dive bomb or something. Maybe he'd still be reluctant to do that for one extra point, but he's more likely to want to do that if he's getting something at the end of it. I know that if you're gaining a place, you're gaining a grid slot, but if you're in a midfield car, is starting 9th versus starting 10th really going to absolutely revolutionise your weekend? It's not, is it? It's not going to make a huge difference. Whereas sending it for P9, colliding and having to start from the back is going to destroy your weekend. So I'm hoping that the extra points will allow drivers to take a few more risks, but I still think we will get a slightly more racy version of what we had before, in that it's basically qualifying, then you start the race, red flag, and then you finish the race on Sunday. But I think there'll be a bit better racing in the points paying positions. But still, you know, Mazepin's P17, is he going to send it up the inside of Latifi for P16 and risk a crash? Probably not.
Well, I mean, the driver you picked there was not a great...
It wasn't a great example. Leave me alone.
But I get your point. I mean, the risk reward during a sprint is, even with the boosted points, I think it's still the cost of binning it is much heavier than like getting an extra point by gaining another place and gaining another spot on the grid. Even, you know, we don't have to talk 9th and 10th. We could talk 5th and 4th, where on a Sunday, 5th is worth, I want to say 12 points, 10, 12 points, which hold station in 5th place on the sprint day, keep your 5th on the grid, and probably get 5th and those 10, 12 points on race day, rather than risk getting an extra place and an extra point on the grid versus throwing it all away if it goes wrong and starting at the back and maybe having to like work your way up to 10th at best. So it's the incentive to go for it on sprint days is still not there because of the impact it has on your Sunday race session. So I think we're still going to see less racy behavior than we do during the Sunday, which is maybe what they want, because they still want the Sundays to be the event. But we're still asking the question we asked last year, which is, what is this adding? And I still think it's taking away from our Saturday, because Saturday qualifying is an hour-long session that we sort of get into. This is just half an hour long, sort of sitting by itself in the middle of Saturday, and it just doesn't feel like an event like qualifying does.
I agree. I don't think it adds anything to the weekend. I don't think it adds. I mean, maybe F1. In fact, they probably do argue that it adds ticket value, because venues can charge more, and maybe if people are paying more, they'll feel like they're getting more for their money if there's a race on a Saturday as well. But I think standard qualifying is far more exciting than anything we've seen from sprint races so far. Now, in sprint races defense, there's only been 3, and we've had, you know, many years of the current qualifying format, so it's not maybe fair to compare it in that regard. But I just don't think it's as exciting, and I'd much rather see normal qualifying on a Saturday. But if they had to do sprint races, then something other than just the first stint of a race, which is what it always feels like, and then you go straight into Sunday with another first stint of the race, and I'm not a big fan. I'm not against change. I've said this many times. I think F1 has got to change and has got to move with the times, otherwise it's just going to get left behind and people are not going to engage with it as much. But there are other ways to do that. Drive to Survive, for example. You know, a lot of people don't like Drive to Survive fans, but whatever your opinion on Drive to Survive fans, they are fans of Formula One, and they are out there buying the merch. And I mean, Silverstone sold out in about December or something like that. I've not got my tickets for this year. I can't get, because I normally wait until the start of the year to do it, but it's sold out. So it's working, and they're getting the fans in. But I don't think sprint races is the one that's making the difference there at all. Certainly not for Silverstone, because it's not there this year. But just not a massive fan of it. They're okay. I'd rather have sprint races than no running on a Saturday, but I'd rather have normal qualifying than sprint on a Saturday. That's my take. A lot of people will agree, a lot of people will disagree, because a lot of fans really enjoy them, and that's fine. If you know, if you enjoy sprint races, good stuff. I'm genuinely pleased for you. People are entitled to like and dislike what they want, but I'm not going to attack people because they have a different view on it. I'm just not a massive fan of them. Again, I think they're okay. I'm just not. I'm trying to think. I think Brazil was the best one last year, but that was the best one because you've got Lewis Hamilton starting out of position, and we saw a little bit of squabbling between some McLarens, Ferraris, and Sergio Perez. But after sort of half of the sprint, that died down because people settled into position thinking it's not worth it, and Lewis was pushing hard coming through, so that made that exciting. But Monza, I thought, was the worst of the three, and I don't think Silverstone was that much far behind it. I don't think they were very good, but maybe that's part of the thinking. Brazil was a good one. Stick it back on this year, and then we'll try Imola and try Austria and see if that improves it. But we'll see.
I think perhaps an optimistic take or a hopeful take may be that if these cars do prove able to get closer and race each other, without having to do a massive dive bomb to make it happen, maybe the sprint races will be it'll be less risky to take those risks and go for moves and stuff. And if I saw someone in chat earlier saying, these are meant to liven up boring race weekends because no one can pass. But actually, I think they might complement new rules if they work, because if you can get the cars racing, then we do genuinely get another 20 laps of, actual excitement happening. So again, this is all fingers crossed. These rules have a positive impact, and we get to see them play out in all the sessions where the cars will be racing with each other.
Watch the timing screens. Gasly's out there pumping in fastest sector times at the moment on the C4 tyre, so that could be about to change. Something I've just spotted on Twitter, actually. I was listening, Stuart. I'm not just walking over your point straight away there, but I just want to get it out of my head while it's there because I will forget. Is that Mercedes are running some cooling gills on the side and towards the back of their car I've not got a shot of it at the moment, under the Team Viewer logo on their engine cover. They've got some cooling gills there, not quite as extreme as we've seen on the Aston Martin, for example, but they are there today. So obviously already new stuff or extra stuff being tested out. I imagine those cooling gills are going to be for places like Bahrain and Singapore and things like that to help keep that nice and cool, obviously, because that's what cooling gills do. They cool things down. So Gaz is out on the C4. Ricciardo is also out on the C4s as well. He's done a 120.288, and that's just cut the gap a little bit on those. How far is he off? A couple of tenths off Gasly and a couple more off Leclerc, so not... I think Gasly's just gone a little bit quicker by a tenth, so... and 129 laps for Gasly as well. Good Lord.
Into the 119s himself. So that's 2 cars now. Excellent. On your point you just made, Mercedes added some cooling gills. You might have seen Red Bull stuck some on their car in the second half of yesterday as well. Probably just, testing out the efficiencies of those. But I think you're more likely to see cooling gills appearing on cars like the Mercedes, I think. Like the Alpine that we've got on screen right now, like the Williams, I want to say cars that don't have the big wide side pods are going to likely who have like kind of less space, less volume in their rear end will more cool that way. And the cars with the big gills, not the big gills, the big side pods, you're going to see. I don't think there's really a name for them. But if you look at the back of some of these cars, you'll see how the bodywork opens up into sort of a big, I don't know. There's just a big space at the back of the car above the diffuser, which is all for cooling, all letting the cooling air out. And you'll see bigger ones of those on the cars with the smallest side pods and then more gills and stuff like that. Look. There's lots of these bodywork shapes are going to be about cooling, and a lot of the stuff you see all the way down the body is going to be how you keep these cars cool.
Yeah, because the Aston are quite extreme with it, aren't they? With the way they've gone with it, they've got them all the way down the side or on top of the car, really. So, and I think the Haas had some interesting stuff as well, which we didn't really talk about yesterday. Maybe try and do that tomorrow, but I think they've got quite an interesting design concept. I think we did talk about yesterday, didn't we? Yeah, we did about Haas.
We did, yeah.
So yeah. There you go. It's apparently Leclerc. Gasly was held up in the final sector behind Perez. Oh, that pesky Red Bull. Holding up Gasly to stop him, getting me excited about a time that really doesn't flipping matter at all. But 129 laps for Gasly. I give it a couple of minutes and I'll run through the times. Let's have a look at chat. I think I've missed a super chat. It's just reloading now. There we go. Jonathan A, thank you very much, mate. Says, I made it to the stream on time. Love for you guys from the Lone Star State. Best F1 channel ever. Member since 100 subscribers.
Wow.
Thank you very much for popping along, and thank you for your support. That's when was 100 subscribers? Good Lord. That would have been about August 20. No, before about July, August 20. No, July. It wasn't long after I started the channel that I hit 100. So July or June, whenever Azerbaijan was. Oh, God, here he goes. 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. What we got? I just want the date for it because that was my first video as a review of that. Apparently, it's called Daniel Ricciardo. I didn't search him, but there you go. Date for that one was June 25th, 2017. So since June 2017. So thank you very much, mate, for that support. Anyway, it's been around for more than 3 seconds. In fact, if you've just literally this second subscribed, thank you for your support. Always appreciate it. But wow, that's a long time. You've been here as long as I have. That's madness. There you go.
And still here. Hasn't got tired of you yet. You haven't scared him off.
That's his first live stream. He'll probably come out of this one going, I am never watching this guy again. Certainly not live. Yeah. What was I going to say on... I was looking more... That was it. I was looking more at the DRS last night, just to scroll through chat. And it does look so bizarre when it's open. It kind of feels... Well, of course it absolutely isn't, but it kind of feels like they've designed the car and then gone, oh, that is one good-looking car, and then sort of turn around and gone, oh, we didn't put DRS in. What can we do? Oh, I know. Let's get the tin opener on this this rear wing and cut a nice little long rectangle out. It does look a little bit ridiculous, but we'll definitely get used to it because we just do as F1 fans. Couple of people, Teku's asking, and I think somebody else asked, I'll see if I find your name, just wondering for an update on the Russian Grand Prix. We did discuss it at the start of the stream, so I'm not going to go too deep into it now. But the latest from F1 was their statement that they are monitoring the situation and will keep monitoring the situation, basically. And there is a meeting tonight between teams and F1 and all of those involved regarding the situation. So we might hear something this week, but I tend to agree with Stuart when he says that I don't think we will. I don't think we'll hear much for a little while, but yeah, that is the situation. My feeling is it will be. I think it's almost inevitable that it will be called off and we'll get another race thrown in there, but we shall see. Keep posted to the channel and socials and all of that, and we'll hopefully get an answer soon. But I think you're right, Stuart. They've kind of got time, haven't they, logistically to make a decision, so we'll see how that one goes, but we'll not get back into it now because, yeah. Did Alpha just paper mache their car? Says Kevin N. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing their car. Apparently, Sky said they launch on the 28th now. I thought it was Sunday, the 27th. So whether they've changed that, I don't know. But I'll keep an eye on socials for that one. But I think I read 27th. Oh, yeah. I'm sure it is.
My calendar has 27th in.
Yeah.
That's the race fans F1 calendar that I'm synced to. So if that's changed recently.
I'll have a check in a second. I'll run through the times again super quickly, and then we're only half an hour left, 27 minutes left of the session. I remember the timer today. How good am I? Charles Leclerc still fastest, 1:19.8. C3 tyre for that time, 58 laps. Pierre Gasly just jumped up or improved his time in second place to a 19.9. He did that on the C4 tyre, 132 laps. Daniel Ricciardo, 118 laps for McLaren, 120.2. That was on the C4 as well. So many laps from these drivers. George Russell, 55 in just this afternoon. 120.537, 58 of course. Leclerc just this afternoon. Russell doing that 20.5 on the C3 tyre. Carlos Sainz, 71 laps this morning, 20.5 also on the C3 tyre, C3 as well. For Sebastian Vettel, 120.7, 58 laps. Alex Albon, 47 laps, 121.5. That was on the C3 tyre this morning. Latifi, 61 laps this afternoon, 121.8. That was on the C3 tyre. Stroll, 121.9 this morning, 55 laps, his fastest time on the C3 tyre. Mick Schumacher, I nearly said Michael again. Mick Schumacher, 121.9. That was on the C3 tyre and 66 laps. Nikita Mazepin up in 11th place at the moment, 122.0. That's his fastest time, and that was done on the C3 as well. 35 laps for him, 115 laps for Esteban Ocon. 122.1 is his fastest. That was set on the C3. Guan Yu Zhou, 122.2 on the C3 tyre, 60 laps. Bottas, just the 21 laps this morning, 122.2 C3 tyre for him. Perez in that Red Bull, 122.4 C2 tyre, 61 laps. And Lewis Hamilton propping up the order with a 122.5 this morning. That was set on the C2 tyre, 40 laps in total. And if you're newish to F1, C1, C2 and all that business, C1 is your hardest tyre, C5 is your softest tyre. So as an idea, the C3 is what I would call a medium tyre, or what is called a medium tyre, not just what I'd call a medium tyre. Bit of Miranda creeping in there. Anyway, yeah, that's what I call a medium tyre. So yeah, that's for those that are new. So that's your times. Please do drop a like. 271 likes. Let's get a few more. Let's get to 300. I'd be happy with 300. Happy with one, to be honest, but 300 would be nice. Please do subscribe as well if you're new. Lots coming up over the next few days, weeks, and months. It's quite a short season, actually. I was going to say long, it's quite a short season, but a lot of races. It's all over 20th of November, Stuart, this year, which is going to be a bit jarring given the last couple of years.
What am I going to do for content for 3 months? Outrageous. I'll be quite glad that we're not like sort of got one toe into Christmas by the time the season comes to an end. It does seem to be dragging on a little bit long by that point. Maybe it'll be easier. Maybe it won't feel as exhausting if we got 23 races, but we get to end early. We get to have an own close day and head home.
Yeah,
we'll see. Can I touch on something that we you sort of mentioned in brief, but it was while you were doing a bunch of things at the same time. Yeah. Because earlier on you said Carlos Sainz was talking about how following cars seems a little bit easier, which is, part of the reason for this entire new suite of regulations. I was going to say there are a couple of other drivers who fed back on that as well. Mick Schumacher in particular said following feels better, turbulence feels less pronounced, and Verstappen said it's easier to stay behind. You don't have the sudden loss of downforce that you had, but you do have a sudden switch to understeer and oversteer. But he said it's all a bit more under control, and following is a little bit easier. So that's good, I think. Obviously, they're still developing these cars, but I think any step in the right direction seems easier. One thing I will say that has been sort of obvious since we started seeing the real cars is they are still trying to exploit all the little things that they were doing before in generating vortices and sending kind of a mass of energized air down the car, the dirty air that you may be familiar with that were preventing cars from getting close through corners. The wing tips, the front wings, they're sort of on the show car. The fancy sort of the way the front wing kind of flips up. It doesn't really have end plates, but it kind of comes up vertically. On the show car, those wing tips came inward, so they sort of came slightly in front of the tire. On all the real cars, they are poking slightly outward because obviously they want to get the air around the side of the tire like they were before. And we're also seeing the front end of the Venturi tunnels. So right in front of the side pod, when you're seeing all of those sort of strakes coming out that guide the air underneath the car, we're definitely seeing some of those being used in a kind of barge boardy way to generate vortices. And also on the front wings, you're allowed these little strakes that kind of join each element of the front wing together, and they're all got their own special little angle and poking out a little bit just to generate a bit of energized air. So we are still seeing teams exploit areas to do the very thing that we're trying to stop them doing, but it sounds like it's a lot better than it was, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that fits with some of the stuff I've seen as well. You put the quotes in there and sort of what they've been saying, but I think, like you said, that's the goal, wasn't it, of these regulations? So if they had failed, then it would have been a bit of a concern. But I think the thing is that you've got the slightly, or might be easier to follow, because obviously testing is one thing, what happens on a race weekend is another, so we will say might. But then you've got the trade-off there in visibility has taken a knock? A bit of a knock, if you like. So will that cause drivers to be a bit more cautious in an overtake anyway? But I don't know. I'm totally speculating now. The only thing I would say on the overtaking side of things is that they were saying that the braking zone, Autosport was saying the braking zone into turn 1 is pretty much the same as it was last year. So cars aren't going any deeper or braking any earlier, which might mean that we're still going to have or get difficulty seeing much overtaking. But I suppose if the cars are close, you know, overtaking is not the be all and end all. Of course it isn't. If cars are close nose to tail for an entire race, look at Monaco 92, Mansell and Senna. I mean, that's one of the greatest ever, isn't it? And there was no overtake there. That was just close racing because you know they've got to be on it. They can't make mistakes, and that's great stuff. But we still want to see some overtaking. But I don't think Spain is really a one that you can get too excited about for overtaking anyway. So I suppose the way to look at it is if drivers are saying it might be easier to follow in Spain, then it might set us up quite nicely for a lot of excitement on tracks like Bahrain where you can overtake and where the DRS works quite well. So yeah, it's good to hear because I was really worried. I can remember going back a couple of years now at least, Kevin, a lot of talk about, you know, these cars will be easy to follow at the time, and then Kevin Magnussen came out and was like, no, this is no better. If anything, it's worse. And you're kind of like, oh no. And I was dreading somebody coming out and just going, yeah, this isn't working. Hopefully that's not. I hope that we can take that might away pretty quickly. I'm excited for this season, and I think that we said yesterday with the changes, hopefully are better for the racing, but they're better for the sport long term as well. So let's keep those positives. Charles Leclerc, by the way, his time that I read a bit ago, I think I read it, was actually a couple of tenths quicker. So he has gone quicker again, 19.689. So good stuff. And Guan Yu Zhou, 63 laps so far this afternoon, which makes up for Alpha's troubles yesterday. Bottas, though, still only 21 this morning. So, like I said earlier, I think we'll see a lot of laps from Alpha tomorrow. I think they're going to need them, aren't they? More than most teams, actually. Good to see Haas doing some laps as well today. Some lappage, definitely.
Yeah, everybody's having a good afternoon, aren't they?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Stick with me. Oh, I don't want to say that in case I'm wrong, but it looks to me. See, now I'm paranoid. Now I'm paranoid because I'm just looking. I've just gone to the Haas account, and there's no mention of your Alcali on there anymore. But I don't know if that was there anyway.
Amazing. Ooh.
Shaw's trying to find news where there ain't news. Just call me the sun.
Well, that's good. No, you sourced the chat. That's all you got to know. So what are you not seeing? And then maybe the chat will know if it was there before.
Yeah, did it say your Alkali Haas F1 team? I don't think it did now have said that. Hang on. Stop talking about cats, Annette. You know I don't like cats. Oh, no, it's still on their website, so... a website's a little harder to update than Twitter. No, apparently a chat said it was never on Twitter. For some reason, just when I went to the page, it just looked wrong. Does that make sense? I just clicked on it and just went, that looks wrong, something's missing, but... Obviously, it was never there. So thank you to chat to confirm that. So if you are watching later on, I'm lying. It just... Do you know how a word can look wrong, but it's spelt correctly? The word today for me was chooses.
Oh, yes.
I ran it through a spell check. It is absolutely fine. I've checked it and all sorts, and it's bang on, but it looks completely wrong to me today. So there you go.
There's a term for that. Here we go. Day 2, we're already on to weirdness. Jamais vu. It's like deja vu, but it means never seen. It's when something just looks wrong, like you haven't seen it before. Same as when you say a word over and over again and it loses all meaning. It's like the word's right, but it just looks foreign to you. Jamais vu. There you go.
Isn't that an ABBA song? I'm not singing it. I will not sing it. I keep singing on your channel. I don't do that over here. I'll keep an eye on that, see if anything comes of it, but I obviously just making stuff up because it looked weird. Jamais vu.
Jamais vu.
Actually, that's a nice word, actually. Full stop, isn't it? That's a very nice word. No, look, I don't like cats. Look, it's a personal thing. I like dogs. I've always liked dogs. My family have always had dogs, but I'm going to stress it. And I made a joke last year in testing streams that made Stuart go, good God, I think was your response. I don't want any harm to come to any animal. So I don't like cats, but I don't want them to get hurt or anybody to not have them. But I do like dogs. I'm desperate to get. Where have we got? How have we got here from Jamais Vu? I am desperate to get a little golden Labrador puppy, and our landlord says that's fine. The problem is they're between 1,500 and $2,500. So I'm kind of like, I might just go to a rescue home and get a puppy, because they're usually about £100, and they tend to make pretty good pets. Rescue puppies. My parents had 2. They were awesome.
That was a lovely aside, I must say.
And you can all file that under information you really needed to know during a testing stream. Tomorrow, goldfish.
It's been a long time since I had a goldfish.
I had a tropical fish tank, an aquarium, I think they call them, and all the fish died. Suddenly, like really suddenly, everything was working. They just died, and I was like, well, I'm not doing that again then.
Oh, God, that sounds expensive and horrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just... you might need... Sorry, I just saw a tweet I need to look at.
No, that's fine. Let's see. I'm gonna go back to chat because I've totally got off F1 and now chat's all on animals. It's all gone wrong. Have you still got a cat, Stuart?
I do. Well, it's complicated.
Oh yeah, don't worry, you don't have to say anymore. No, I know. Don't say anymore. Sorry, as soon as I said it, I was like, oh no. Yeah, I have 2. Are they budgies, parakeets?
That is a tricky pet to have for someone who needs to have clean audio a lot.
You're not kidding. Somebody said to me, "I'll get budgies. They're clean and they're quiet." Are they echoes like they molt all year round? Christ, feathers.
Oh, here we
everywhere.
go. Hang on, you might want to have a look at this. If you go to the official F1 Twitter account, it's got a nice slow-mo of Charles Leclerc porpoising. If you want to see it happening, it looks very bouncy. As I think you wouldn't be surprised to hear. So
yeah, I absolutely.
Oh, and the Alpine as well. Yeah, you can't show that, but
can't show it, but very nice.
It's the rear end is what's happening. It's not the whole car. It's the rear end that goes up and down as the car reaches certain speeds. They'll need to sort that out.
It's like the lowrider mission on GTA San Andreas. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a nice tricked out suspension. It's on purpose.
That is. Look at his head. Sorry, I realise I'm talking about something I can't show on stream, but if you are on Twitter, head on over to the F1 Twitter feed. I'm just watching it now, and it's just bouncing, and his head is just... Wow. Is that something they can iron out? I know we were saying yes about really stiff suspensions. Is that something they can solve for the rest of this season or over the next few weeks, or is that something these cars are just probably going to do?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd like to hope they can iron out, if they can work out exactly... what's stalling the aerodynamics there. It does look really funny in the slow-mo with his head bouncing. He looks like he should be hanging out the left-hand side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at someone, you know?
Oh, reference. I love it. What a tune as well. I've retweeted that for anyone who follows me on Twitter, at F1word, or you can just go to at F1 and see that one. But I know slow-mo, it's the same in like football and things when you watch tackles slow down. In slow-mo, things look more exaggerated, don't they? So it might not be as bad as it looks, but crikey. But you know the weirdest thing? I could watch that all day. That's the weirdest thing about that. Very odd, I know. We are 12 minutes away from the end of day 2. Some of you will be saying thank goodness for that. We'll, of course, be back tomorrow for the third day. Or Stuart won't be. I will be with somebody. I've forgotten who. I've completely forgotten. But yeah, I'll be here. At least I will be here. At least one person will be here to talk about the afternoon tomorrow. Probably around 3-ish again for the last part. And then, as I keep saying, we will be live for all of the testing in Bahrain when we can actually tell you what's going on, because we'll be able to see rather than just reading blogs and staring at bouncing Ferraris on Twitter. Which is just all I'm going to do all night now. I'm going to come to you guys in chat then before we get to the end of this session. If you've got any questions, pop them in. If I don't get to them now, I'll try and get to them before the end of the stream. And then we will do a final run through of the times for the day and round up some talking points, I suppose, and then take a few more questions a little bit later. So, yeah. I
Perfect.
keep punching my mic. Daniel Philpott says you haven't mentioned Stoff yet today. There you go. Stoffel Van Dorn, greatest driver that's ever lived. There you go. I mean that's very debatable, isn't it? But bless him. Wingcap says it's like he's on springs. It really does. It's such a bounce to it, isn't it? Absolutely. Will it be on television tomorrow? Says Drew Seth. Nope. There's no television coverage apart from your stuff from F1 on YouTube and Sky if you're in the UK that do that. So no, it's not on TV tomorrow, unfortunately. It would be nice. It would be nice to see them. Don't buy from a breeder, says Jake. I won't. I absolutely won't. No, of course. He looks like his head is banging to his tune, says, oh no, it does, doesn't it? It looks like a great afternoon in that car, doesn't he? Is there a chance Mazepin could get fired? That's from Stuart, FXY123. Honest answer, I don't know. It's something. It's one of the many things that I want to read up on tonight with how it's going to affect potentially Haas and things. So I don't want to say too much, but
be a bit harsh.
It would be because it's not like it's not like he's done it, is it? No, I'd be surprised if they did, but it's quite a weird time at the minute. Anything could happen anywhere, I suppose. So we'll keep an eye on it, but obviously, as soon as we know for sure, I'd be surprised. I think, if anything, the Russian Grand Prix will get cancelled and some sponsors will be told to do one. I think we'll be about or will happen with that with relation to F1. Vasek, I hope I pronounced that right, or Vasek. I'm trying. Did something happen to Bottas? He's done just 20 laps-ish. That seems way too low of a number. I would check with that. I mean, Alpha are the worst during testing for updates. They just don't tell you anything except look at our new fancy camo merchandise, which you can't ever see. So, yeah. No, there's a day 2 and go, and they've announced a crypto sponsorship. Of course they have, because that's the new tobacco sponsorship, isn't it? Crypto now and all of that business. So yeah, nothing from Alpha. I'll have a check on the feeds that I need to have a look at, but I don't think there's been. All I know is that they had some little issues yesterday. They had issues in their shakedown, and that appears to be just rolling over into testing. But for sure, it's been sorted this afternoon, whatever it is, because Guan Yu Zhou's up on 67 laps. So I can't see. A quick scroll through the Autosport thing, see if there's anything on there about Alpha. Not really that I can see. So I mean, I'll keep an eye to see if Bottas says anything, and we can go over it tomorrow if you're here. But yeah. See, Curious says Haas have removed your alkali from their Twitter name, but people are saying it wasn't there, and so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
we'll just wait and see on that one. So oh wow, sorry, I got your name bang on second time. Fantastic. Oh, see, I'll forget next time and call you Steve or something, because I'm an idiot like that. I'm just trying to. I can't find anything on Bottas, so I'll leave it on there. If I do, I will let you know. Was the DRS open? Says Space. No, DRS wasn't open on the Ferrari from what I could see. I kind of wish it was though. I would have been. Imagine that bouncing with that DRS. That would have been a great shot.
From what I heard about this, DRS mitigates it a bit. It's better with the DRS for porpoising, but yeah, we'll see what they figure it out.
Oh, here's a nice little explanation from Alex Brundle. Says, so what's happening with that bouncing and that porpoising? Number one, downforce sucks the air to the deck. Secondly, the floor gets so close to the track it stalls and the floor stops working. And 3, the car pops up of the floor because of sudden downforce loss and so on. So that's what that one is. I know you've explained that, Stuart, which is for anybody that's coming in and wanted Alex Brundle's definition of what that is, but it looks...
Being replaced live on stream is what's happening.
Let's welcome Alex Brundle, who just sounds like Martin Brundle to me. It's crazy bouncing. Sorry, I can't stop looking at it. We're coming to the last 6, well, just under 7 minutes now, so not long to go.
Interesting thing, one of the things that the people who are actually at the track looking at the cars have noticed is Verstappen has completely smoothed out his driving style, more like Jensen, because he was quite aggressive, like late on the brakes, flinging the cars into things. He's smoothed it out, like a nice steady on the brakes, steady on the accelerator through the car. That's the way he's driving this new car. It's a complete change in character. Whereas I'm not entirely sure what Leclerc was doing before, but apparently he's driving it like an absolute maniac. The exact opposite of Jenson Button. So that's interesting and actually like pretty impressive that Verstappen's able to change it up so dramatically.
Yeah, and the other thing actually that I forgot to mention earlier that we got from testing yesterday from people trackside was apparently the cars sound different. The aero's giving a different noise in certain corners on the exit of corners and things, and I can't remember what the noise was that Autosport described. But apparently there's a noticeable difference there, which is interesting. You probably won't even notice watching at home, but I bet trackside it's quite an obvious thing.
And apparently the tires locking up is less high pitched now with the new tires. So yeah, brand new sounds, just not from the engine.
Interesting. Like I said, we're not noticed that at home, are we? So we'll see. Yeah, I've seen that, Jack. I'm not sure how legit that is, mate, about the Haas thing, but I'll dig around after the stream. Not going to do it on the stream. Let's see. We've got still plenty of action on the track. Leclerc's out there, Gasly, Vettel, Sainz, but apparently, according to the Autosport blog, nobody really pushing anything just yet. So, yeah, all that's happened here is I've completely thrown myself off with the talk of puppies and everything else. So I'll try and get back on track with the F1 stuff now. Definitely, I will take your questions as well. A couple of minutes, and then we'll start rounding things up for the day. Nothing. I saw something on Andretti today. Actually, that was the other thing I wanted to cover. Hang on a second. It was from Zach Brown. So we talked yesterday briefly about Andretti and comments made by Toto Wolff that they need to effectively prove themselves to F1 that they can have value, I suppose, is the point. But Zach Brown has sort of gone the other way and said, I think Andretti as a name, this is a quote, as a highly credible racing team and knowing who his backers are and who he is, they will no doubt help us grow the sport in North America. I think the teams that may not support another team are being short-sighted. Are we trying to grow the sport? ? Or are we doing what racing teams have a bad tendency to do, which is think about today and not the future? In F1, Zach, I don't believe you. So Zach Brown coming out saying, we should be embracing Andretti and bringing them in. And like I said yesterday, Stuart, I think Andretti, if you've got a team wanting to join F1, are a fairly safe bet. But as you pointed out, they want your Porsches and they want your Porsche. They want your Porsche. You want your they want the VW group involved somewhere, don't they? And things like that. So it's a shame that they're being so closed about it. But as I said again yesterday, Ross Brawn was pretty clear that he wants, and F1 wants the rules for 2022, or to know the rules for 2022 work before they start bringing new teams into things and start splitting up prize money and stuff like that. So I totally get what Zach Brown's saying, and I think they are. I think short-sighted is a good phrase, actually. To be fair, from Zach, they are, because they're only there to look after themselves, aren't they? Formula One teams say all the time about, they want to do what's best for the sport. I'm sure they do, because if the sport doesn't exist, then their teams don't exist anymore. They'll exist elsewhere, but they don't exist in Formula One. But ultimately, Mercedes will always want to do what's best for Mercedes, and Red Bull will always want to do what's best for Red Bull, and so on through the paddock. So I think it's a good point from Zach Brown, actually. I'm on his side for a change on this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Zach. And you've got to have not a plan, but you've got to invest in the actual sport and the platform itself to continue to be around to support you. I think Zach's a kind of new school kind of team boss. Toto is more of the old school, old guard in style and variety. And Zach's been very transformative of McLaren, bringing it to the fans, thinking about it in terms of media and business and look and showing itself off in a very public way. I wouldn't go as far as like Zach Brown said. I think he said something along the lines of, you've probably got the quote in front of you, but Andretti having like automatic enthusiasm, like teams should automatically want Andretti to join, but I do think we have to think about things in this way. I think there are two things. Obviously, I think Andretti would be good for the sport, and I think opening up to North America to a degree is a thing that still needs to happen. But the things Toto Wolff has been saying is true too. We need to make sure teams coming in that are able to stand on their own 2 feet and function. I think whenever we think about bringing new teams in, we have to be wary of the absolute disaster that was 2010, when we sort of had 3 teams brought in with very little support in a very kind of short-sighted manner, and those 3 teams couldn't perform, and all 3 of them fell on their backside and disappeared again. We don't want that. We want teams that came in like Haas, that I know they had a partnership with Ferrari, but they could support themselves. They were competitive. They were competitive for a number of seasons. They had a dodgy year last year, but fine. But they would had themselves together, and it looks like they'll be pretty good this year as well. That's what we want. We want a team that is sort of self-sustaining and competitive and can go from year to year without just sort of panicking at an existential level. And it seems like Andretti can do that. It seems like Andretti at least know what it takes to do that. So if they want to enter, they're not going to enter naively. So yeah, I'm kind of with Zach. I think we need to think about things in this manner. And let's be honest, we could be waiting for Porsche forever.
Yeah. Feels like we already have.
Whereas Andretti is already a racing squad that are ready to come,
Yeah, no, I like I said, I feel like we've waited for Porsche for ages, haven't we, really? Seems to be every other year. Checkered Flag, by the way, is out for the second day, not the final day, the second day of pre-season testing in Barcelona. I'll go through times in just a moment. Jonathan O'Keefe in chat just saying Andretti to be the second Renault Group team, so that will be something I'm sure Alpine are pushing for. But I was just going to say about the teams that fell flat on their faces, as you kind of put it there. They were promised the world, weren't they, from Bernie, with cost caps and all sorts that never ever came to fruition, as was the way with how he did things sometimes. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to see Andretti in. I think we could do with some more teams. I often look at drivers that, I say it all the time, F1 isn't the be all and end all, but a lot of drivers, it's where they want to be. It's Formula One. So I look through F2 and drivers that have been champion and have had to go off and race elsewhere because they can't get a seat in F1 because there aren't enough seats available. And I think I'd like another team or two, but I suppose, you could have a 30-car grid and there'll be somebody somewhere that says, oh, it's a shame that such and such couldn't get a seat. It's always going to be a problem. There's always going to be too many drivers for not enough seats. So, yeah, I'm with Zach Brown on that. And the other thing I was going to ask, actually, Stuart, is how times change. I can remember going back a few years now when Zach Brown first came into McLaren, the criticism people leveled at him, people really did not like him and didn't like the way he was going about things. And now people, I certainly have changed my view a little bit on him as well. People really seem to like him and seem to get on board with a lot of what he says and have sort of realising, I think it helps that McLaren have been turned around, sort of look at Zach Brown now and go, yeah, he's good at what he does and he's good for McLaren. So that's nice to see. It's not often people change their mind like that, is it? So,
I was talking to someone recently. There's a PhD student who was talking about, I won't go into particular things around the fan behavior in F1 is what she was studying. But we were talking about, unlike sort of football and other sports, there's not a lot of fans don't necessarily center themselves on teams. Like they'll center themselves around drivers. If they're like a Lewis Hamilton fan or whatever, they'll become sort of Mercedes fans by proxy. But if Lewis Hamilton went off to Alpine, they would, Mercedes hats would go in the shelves and they'd become Alpine fans. That's the kind of way it works, except for Ferrari, obviously, who have the Tifosi, very strong following there from their brand. It's sort of Ferrari first over there, Charles Leclerc second, as it were. And I think we see Aston Martin attempting to sort of cultivate a kind of British Ferrari kind of analog where it's going to be the British team. But I think the second most successful team in terms of cultivating a fan base in and of itself is McLaren. In the last few years, that's clearly what its aim is. And all of its sort of social media campaigns and the way it conducts itself is all very fan-centric. It has fans at the launches. It has those weekly things on its social media platform where it like highlights its McLaren fans in their McLaren gear, showcases their photos. And I think we are seeing a large swathe of people who are McLaren people, like maybe McLaren first, which is really impressive, honestly. And I think that's all about what Zach Brown's brought to that team. It's a very, very different team than the Ron Dennis McLaren was.
Totally agree. Ron was very, very strict. I might go into this very old school actually. I might go into this one day properly, but there was a period where I wasn't all that keen on Lewis Hamilton, and it was when he was at McLaren, and he moved to Mercedes in 2013, and not instantly, but very quickly, I saw another side to him, and I thought, I actually really like this guy, and I think that he was sort of held back in what he could say at McLaren, if that makes sense. I don't think we ever saw the real Lewis Hamilton away from the track at McLaren, because Ron Dennis liked things very old school, kind of short haircuts, things like that. He wasn't keen on anything. He liked things for sponsors to be prim and proper and what he thought it should be. And I think that, you look at Lewis Hamilton now, not as a person to look at, it's obviously his hairstyle's different, he's aged and all that, but as a person, he's very different now to what he was at McLaren. Of course, that's something with age, but for me, it really happened. It wasn't instantaneous, but if you look back, it feels like it was. When he joined Mercedes, he had more freedom over his image rights, and we got to see what I think is the real Lewis Hamilton versus the Lewis Hamilton that had to follow Ron Dennis's rules, if that makes sense. That's how I always viewed it. So I've never disliked Lewis Hamilton, but I was never really all that fussed at McLaren. I don't ever feel like we got the real Lewis until he moved on to Mercedes. So that's just a personal thing. Maybe I'm the only one in the world that thinks that. But
do you remember what that 1 year when Ron Dennis got a little bit spicy and he added like an orange fade to the top of the grey shirts?
Whoa. He'd been drinking that afternoon, hadn't he, when he came up with that one? Because Fernando Alonso, we know him for his hair, as well as being a world champion. But we know him for his hair as well. He's got that fantastic head of hair. But even he shaved his head at McLaren, didn't he?
Yeah, him and Lewis turned up on launch day or whatever. Yeah, number one all over, both of them. Just very straight. I think facial hair as well was also frowned upon, like a grammar school or something. It was its own brand. It was, McLaren was definitely its own thing back in those days, and you sort of had to respect it for being what it was. And it probably got a lot of sponsors for, associating themselves with something that was very, very well managed and just so. But I much prefer the looser, fan-focused McLaren that knows how to have fun.
Yeah,
even Ferrari know how to have fun now.
Yeah, they use social media. It always surprises me when I see Ferrari post anything. I'm like, oh dear. Welcome.
Yeah, it's a new world.
Actually, Jay Starship just saying in chat, Lewis did say he couldn't be himself at McLaren, so I've missed that. So thank you very much for letting me know. I might go and try and dig some quotes out for that one. Thank you. Anyway, let's round up the days running then, the lap times, the final lap times for today for what they're worth, and the lap count for the final time. So Charles Leclerc finishes day 2 on top. So it was Norris yesterday, it's Leclerc today. 119.689 from Leclerc. That was set on a C3 tyre, and he's done a total of 78 laps. Pierre Gasly has been a machine this afternoon, 140 or all day, 146 laps for him, and he did a fastest time of 1:19.9, and that was on the C4 tyre. C4 tyre as well for Ricciardo, and he did his 1:20.288. He's done 126 laps, so many laps in testing this year already. George Russell P4 for Mercedes, 1:20.537. He set that time on a C3 tyre, 65 laps in total. 71 laps for Carlos Sainz. His fastest time was done on the C3s, and that was a 1:20.546. Sebastian Vettel, Aston Martin, 1 minute 20.784. C3 tyre did that time on for a total of 73 laps as well. Sergio Perez, slow start to the afternoon, but certainly got the laps in after that. 78 in total for today. C3 tyre was his fastest tyre, and that was a 1:17. It was not. It was a 1:21.430 C3 tyre, 78 laps, like I say. Nikita Mazepin in 8th place. His fastest time was a 1:21.512, and that was done on the C3 tyre, 41 laps in total. 47 laps for Alex Albon. His fastest time was on the C3s, and that's a 1:21.531, a 1:21.8 for Guan Yu Zhou. That was done on the C3 tyre, 71 laps, so definitely a better afternoon for Alfa Romeo than it was a morning. Latifi, 1:21.894. He did that time on the C3 tyres, 61 laps his total. Lance Stroll, 1:21.9 on the C3 tyres, 55 laps for him. 66 laps for Mick Schumacher, and his fastest time was set on the C3 tyres, and that was a 1:21.949. 1:22.164 for Ocon. That was on the C3 tyres, 124 laps. So Ocon down there in 14th place, but quietly getting on with it today. 124 laps, like I say, 21 laps, just 21 laps again for Bottas. Not much today. 1:22.2, that was set on the C3s. And Lewis Hamilton, like I said earlier, props the table up today. A 1:22.5 this morning, that was on the C2 tyres, and a total of 40 laps. So 105, that is, my quick maths there, for Mercedes. So there we go. That is you're running your headlines for the day, really. We've seen a very bouncy Ferrari. I encourage you, if you're just tuning in or if you're watching later, to go and check that out on F1's Twitter. That thing looks bizarre but somehow brilliant. So I was quite enjoying watching that. I'd encourage you to do the same. Sergio Perez brought out the first red flag of testing, and that was due to a gearbox problem that was later resolved, although he did have a slow start to the afternoon, like I say, eventually getting out to do some laps. Nikita Mazepin caused the second red flag, and that was about halfway through-ish the afternoon session, and that was due to a fuel pump problem. That was all sorted. They only got out to do some more laps, and it's just been generally busy in terms of lappage today, but a few more headlines than yesterday, but no more in terms of the on-track action than a couple of red flags and lots of laps, really, to be honest, and question marks over what's going on at Alfa Romeo. And also in terms of your news headlines, let's have a quick look at this if you just for those that tune in a little bit later and follow this timestamp to this part of the video. Ferrari has said, or Mattia Binotto has said, that Formula One outfits underestimated the porpoising potential. Porpoising potential. Oh, that's a fantastic. Oh, that's it. F1 teams are meeting tonight for a crisis meeting to discuss the future of the Russian Grand Prix for this year, having previously released a statement saying they were monitoring the situation, nothing to add. Max Verstappen has said it's very unfair, and Michael Massey was thrown under the bus, so unfair that Michael Massey was moved on from his race director role. Sebastian Vettel, back on Russia, said that he will not be attending the Russian Grand Prix if F1 chooses to race there later this year, and he has made that decision, and that is his decision. So there you go. And Daniel Ricciardo topped the morning session today. P3 in the end, but yeah, he got the honours of that morning session toppage. I don't know how I ended up at toppage, but there you go. So yeah, that's your roundup. What stood out for you today then, Stuart, apart from that bouncy flipping Ferrari with its porpoising potential?
I mean, I'm really glad we finally got to see that, because we sort of talked about it a bit, but I knew it was visible from people watching it. But to get that actual visual of the bouncing is quite something. I think, I mean, it's not the most exciting summer in the world, but actually, we've got a day where cars are getting the laps in. We had a couple of red flags, but actually, this is a thoroughly decent test session in terms of getting mileage in. So very interesting. Obviously, you got Hamilton at the bottom, but again, this all means nothing, and he's in the C2 and everything. I think Alpha looks fine. I think they had some troubles in the morning, but clearly they've got nearly 100 laps in total today. Hopefully they're going to crack 100 tomorrow. How many did Haas get in total? 66 plus 42.
108.
So there you go. Even the teams that were struggling yesterday, I think, have kind of got themselves sorted out today. There's been there's not been any kind of exciting headline grabbing things. There's not the old McLaren when they first shoved a Honda engine in, or people going into the barrier, or someone having like extreme reliability problems where they're breaking down constantly. It's just been fairly steady, which I think that's what we need right now. I think, as exciting as it is, if all the cars were struggling and breaking down and having a lot of problems with these new cars, I think that would be bad for the season. So I'm glad it turns out they know what they're doing and they built cars that work.
So, I mean, in terms of your lappage, you said there lots of good mileage. Top three drivers for their individual lap count. Pierre Gasly, 147. Daniel Ricciardo, 126. And Esteban Ocon, 125. And in terms of teams overall, Ferrari did 150. AlphaTauri, 147. Aston Martin, 129. McLaren, 126. Alpine, 125. Williams, 108. Haas, 108. Mercedes, 106. Alfa Romeo, 92. And Red Bull, 78. So, I mean, I'm sat here saying a bit concerned about Alfa Romeo, but more looking at Bottas and then seeing they did 92 laps, which isn't awful. It's nearly 100, whereas Red Bull only did 78 because of that gearbox problem and other things as well for Sergio Perez. So, Verstappen did Verstappen do 147-ish, something like that on his own yesterday, and Perez only got the 78 in today, so maybe that's something for. But I mean, Red Bull have reasons for that, don't they? With the problems with the gearbox and things that cost a lot of time and the things they had to do to sort that one out. So yeah, they're your counts for the day in terms of your laps, and of course that is the thing that matters in testing. You'll get sick of us saying it. Don't read anything into the times. It's all about lappage, particularly when you're at this shakedowny test thing. That's some good stuff. So yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, this happens every year. Every year we say lap times don't matter. It's about how many laps you put in. Don't read anything into it. And then we say we're sick of saying it. It's a cliche. I mean, you have to say it, and then by the time we get to FP1, then we can start looking at lap times. Although, to be honest, in Bahrain, I think we will see some inklings of performance, but I still think we're not going to know exactly what's going on until we get to Bahrain race weekend. But again, we'll have some hints. Like, I think we were aware that Red Bull were doing well at last year's testing. We didn't know exactly how well they'd done over the winter, but we knew they seemed to have a nice car.
Ted loved that car, didn't he? The Red Bull in a notebook yesterday.
Yes,
he's obsessed with it.
I mean, it's exciting. It's very dramatic. It's the kind of one of those cars that makes you sit up and go, ooh, what's going on here? They've actually managed to fill in they've managed to paint the bits they hadn't painted yesterday. I mean, that's maybe they didn't really show us the car because they hadn't finished it by the launch.
I'm trying to do maths.
Oh no,
which is incredibly dumb.
Leave it to the professionals, John.
I really shouldn't I? I might wait for Motorsport Stats to update their thing. Ryan P in chat just asking if we've got combined for the teams for both days. I don't think I do. So I might try to do some maths on stream. If not, I'll retweet something with it later. I really probably should have kept hold of. I might actually. Oh, hang on. Oh, don't be daft, Sean. Not live. This will be a disaster. I can't add 2 and 2 together. I struggle with it.
I believe in you. I'm trying to look as you talk as well.
I don't believe in me. I'm gonna bail out of it immediately and wait to see if somebody else does the work for me somewhere at Autosport or something. I don't know. Yeah, we'll try, Ryan.
While you talk, I will quickly do it.
Oh, brilliant. There you go. If I say it enough, Stuart will do the maths. Yes, so there are your times for the day. Let's have a look in chat, and then I'll run through them super quickly before I round things off later on, and then Stuart can shout at me when he's done his mathematics. If you remember, Lewis had to wear long sleeve shirts 99% of the time to cover up his tattoos when he was there. Says Black Hawk. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that spotted all of that and felt that way. It's good to hear that he kind of. Yeah. Serious development regarding the Russian Grand Prix. VTV, the GP's title sponsor, has just been sanctioned by the UK. Thank you very much to Pixel Flow. Annette trying to explain porpoising. Good luck with that, because it's something I'll get eventually. I'll understand it eventually. I never. Nope, that's a conversation with somebody else. It's okay. Please don't believe me, Mary. I'm not very good with maths. It just doesn't work. Calculators are great, but it would just be me going as I try and add 3 and 3 and come up with 184. I've not missed any super chats. I might have missed one, actually. Hang on a sec. CF Racing. Yes, you did mention that. Thank you very much for your super chat. Said F1 isn't selling Russian Grand Prix tickets anymore. So just to kind of, in case you missed it earlier, the F1 ticket site sort of removed Russia as, from the ticket sales site. So it wasn't on there anymore, the Russian Grand Prix. And then there was a lot of excitement last night because Turkey was on there and people found it and people sort of thought, oh, brilliant, Turkey's going to replace Russia. That'll all get confirmed. But then I spoke to somebody last night and that's not true at all. It's effectively a holding page sort of thing that's there as almost a contingency plan for F1 to use. There's probably one in there for Portugal, probably one in there for wherever else we've been over the last Mugello, maybe over the last couple of years. But I think it's highly probable that we'll be going somewhere other than Russia in September. But to be honest, as Stuart said earlier, I wouldn't really be overly fussed if they cancelled Russia and then just had a gap, because that's a lot of races. 23 races is a lot, so missing a week I don't think will be the end of the world at all. Jonathan Key says Ron Dennis equals strict headmaster. He was very strict, wasn't he? And James says Luca Badoa has actually done the most testing of any driver ever. Didn't help him in the Grand Prix though. Harsh, but no, that's fair enough. And the Honey Badger loves the car. Reminds him of his off-road ute. Is that from Simon Bishop? Thank you very much, mate, for that one. And yeah, so Leclerc tops the final day. Not the final. I think it's final day. The second day. It is not the final day. Lando Norris yesterday did a 1:19.568, so about a tenth of a second off that today, just over for Lando. And that was, to be fair, it was a C4 tyres for Lando Norris as well. So Leclerc a compound harder. So there you go.
Laps.
Have you got them? Oh, math. Yeah. Go on then.
All right. So this is your 2-day count for the total amount of laps per team. Ferrari on top, 303 laps over the 2 days. AlphaTauri 268, so almost 40 laps less than Ferrari. Then Alpine 252, Aston Martin 248, pretty much the same. Williams did a good 240 laps, which is much better than I think the 0 laps they did in 2019 or 2020, whenever that was. Mercedes 6th with 233, McLaren 7th 229, Red Bull only 225. That's because of their problems they had today, really. Haas did 151 and Alfa Romeo down the bottom, 124, less than half of the top 4 teams. So there you go. Ferrari on top, 303 laps by quite a way.
Superstar, thank you. I would never have got all that done on a stream, no way. But interesting there, though, 124 for Alfa. I know they are cut adrift at the bottom there versus Ferrari on 303, for example. But they're not that far off Haas, really, are they, when you consider the problems that they've had? So, and actually, I mean, to be fair, 75 for Haas-ish, 74 off Red Bull. I mean, that's not horrific, is it? I know they have the problems with Red Bull, but they could get in there. They could easily recover that tomorrow, is what I'm thinking, Haas and Alfa.
Yeah, they had good afternoons. They got 71 and laps for Alfa Romeo, 66 for Haas. So they sort of, I mean, they had a normal afternoon, essentially. They were doing the same as everyone else. So, yeah, they just had a dodgy sort of first day. They were well off on the first day, but today's been a lot better for them.
Yeah, I mean, we say don't read into the times. Look at the laps and how many laps they've done. Ferrari solidly, I would say, out front. 303 versus 268. I mean, Alpha could get that tomorrow if they wanted to. But that's a lot of laps for Ferrari. So, okay, lap times don't matter. But if we are going to sit here saying that the number of laps is the thing that matters, then 303 is pretty bloody good for Ferrari across 2 days of testing. So, reliability-wise, looking good. Definitely. I think they're all looking good reliability-wise, really, aren't they? Apart from Checo's gearbox today. Reliability isn't really the issue nowadays in F1 that it was back in the 90s, for example, and even further back. But, yeah, reliability spot on for Ferrari. The car looks good out on track from those that are trackside and are looking at it and the experts that know what they're talking about. We just need to make sure that bouncing doesn't cause any problems. That's my obsession now. I'm just going to call it bouncing. We don't need any other term. Yeah, so I'm just trying to look at the list here of who's done what, and I'm just trying to work out if anybody's Mercedes 233 laps. I think that, if I can read my hand right, you said that, didn't you? 233 for Mercedes.
Yeah,
that seems quite low for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seemed like they were doing better than that. But I mean, if you look at Red Bull to AlphaTauri, which is 7 teams, all within about 50 laps, 225 from Red Bull, 268 from AlphaTauri. So Mercedes being 6th in the list is actually they're basically equivalent to most teams, to be honest. I think Ferrari stands out at the top and Haas and Alfa Romeo stand out at the bottom, but everyone else basically did the same amount of running. I've dropped those laps into the Discord, by the way, if you want to. I know you've written them down, just in case that's useful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, it's a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll keep that handy for tomorrow when I inevitably forget again. Yeah, just have a quick look at chat before we wrap up, I think, today. See if anybody's got anything they want to know or anything they're asking about, anything in particular. Doesn't look like it at the moment. Stuart with the calculus. Jonathan O'Keefe calling you a human spreadsheet.
Yes, human. Not just a spreadsheet.
I think, you know what? I think we'll wrap it up on this, and a super quick answer to this one, a nice way to round off the stream. I think we kind of know the answer here, but P Van B says, have there been any design elements called into question by any teams yet? If not, who's going to be first? I've not seen anything
yet. And I think we would know, actually, because you tend to get some team bosses more than others. You tend to get people going like, oh, I don't like what that team's doing. Like you saw with the DAS, we see what Mercedes are doing. So not yet. But also, I think it's a little bit trickier to know immediately where teams are pushing it at the limits, because these technical regulations are all new. And I think, and actually the way they're sort of written is quite new. The technical regulations for 2022, the document actually looks quite a bit different to the old one. So I think it's a little bit less obvious just looking at a car necessarily and saying like, oh, this is doing strange things. They're pushing some boundaries here. I think they need to sort of examine it. So maybe you see some things next week where they've been like, aha, we've looked at the data and Red Bull have basically made a barge board or whatever. I'm sure everybody's legal, but I think we might, maybe if there's anything funny going on, we might. In fact, if there's anything funny going on, I think teams aren't going to put it onto their car until maybe day 2 of the Bahrain test, at least anyway. So lots of things still being held close to their chest.
That was the feeling from some journos around F1, was that we wouldn't see some of the cheeky things teams were trying until well into Bahrain testing, because they won't want the FIA to get too much of a heads up on it, will they? So yeah, there you go. Marie Ho says, can you tell who's the technical orientated channel, I wonder? Yeah, ain't me at all. So thank you very much for that math, Stuart, there, your description. And somebody saying there, DRD Nobody saying, what exactly does porpoising do? jump in if I get this completely wrong, Stuart. I'm going to read it from Alex Brundle's tweet, or if there's anything you want to add to it. But first of all, the downforce sucks the car to the deck. Number 2, the floor gets so close to the track it stalls and the floor stops working. And then number 3, the car pops up the floor because of sudden downforce loss. And so on. And that's what causes that bouncing.
So it's like it's a looping effect. The car needs the air underneath to suck it down. It goes down so far that the air stops going underneath it, essentially. So it bounces back up. Suddenly there's air underneath the car again. It sucks it back down. So it's like this loop of sucking and releasing, pulling the back of the car down.
I'm so glad that I've not got clipping on this, because I feel like sucking and releasing is something that could be quite easy.
I realised as I was saying it, it's like, wow. But yeah, that's essentially what's happening underneath the car. It's pulling it down, and then it's letting it go, and then pulling it back down again.
Do you know, the fact I think we've got sucking and releasing, I think that's where we're going to call it a day. I think that's it for today. Thank you very much, Stuart, for giving me that giggle at the end. Thank you very much for today and for yesterday as well. You can sit and enjoy testing tomorrow without me chuntering in your ear all afternoon, which would be lovely, I'm sure. But an interesting couple of first days. But what I would say is I'm kind of, based on some of the things we're hearing and things like that, and people sort of saying, oh, these cars are not going to be the cars to see in Bahrain, I'm kind of starting to understand, aside from the money side of it, why F1 is calling this a testing event or a shakedown rather than testing, because we're not seeing anything like the cars we're going to see in Bahrain, and we're certainly not seeing anything like the lap times and things like that. But we are seeing plenty of mileage.
Yeah, which is nice. Yeah, there's no drama, is there? And there are definitely things coming that are being hidden from us. So this is just the beginning.
I like that. This is just the beginning. But yeah, thank you very much, Stuart, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers for having me on. Enjoy tomorrow's stream.
I will try. Yes, thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you to you guys as well for today. It's been a pleasure as always, as it is for these testing streams. I do get a bit... If you're new to the channel, by the way, I was going to say I don't waffle all that much. I do, but usually about things F1 related and not puppies and other things. So, yes, please do leave a like before you disappear, by the way. 398, couple more, and we're at 400. That'd be fantastic. 800 is still here, so please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new as well. Just super quickly, I'll fly through the top 10. For anyone tuning in late, Leclerc topped the fight at the second day. Stop calling it the final day. Where has that come from? So, Leclerc has topped day 2 of the first test. I give up. 119.6, 79 laps, 147 laps for Gasly, 119.9, 122 for Ricciardo in third, 126 laps, 66 laps for Russell, 120.5, Sainz 120.5, 71 laps. Vettel did 74 laps on the 120.7. Perez 121.4, 78 laps, 42 laps for Mazepin, 121.5. Alex Albon 121.5, 47 laps, and 71 laps for Guan Yu Zhou on a 121.885, and their tyres were Leclerc C3, Gasly C4, Ricciardo C4, Russell C3, Sainz C3, Vettel C3, Perez C3, Mazepin C3, Albon C3, and Guan Yu Zhou C3 as well. And just anything to grab out of there headline-wise? Out the other half of the field, not really. Ocon 14th, 125 laps is probably the big thing there from the other 6 drivers that were out there today. So yes, we'll leave it there for today. Like I say, thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to drop a like before you disappear, and subscribe as well. Lots to come over the coming weeks. Just with every day of testing, we get that little bit closer to the season, and I just get even more excited like a ridiculous child. It's crazy, really. But yes, looking forward to seeing these cars driven in anger in Bahrain, the first race weekend. Definitely can't wait to see these properly and see if these new rules have worked. Exciting stuff. Don't forget as well, the channel is powered by Motorsport Network and Motorsport Images. Thank you to those guys. And obviously the live timing things today came from, I think it's we're on Autosport today, but also you can follow the live blog on Motorsport as well. And you can follow me on social media. All of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until tomorrow, goodbye.